Hey everyone, welcome to our town hall. Again, on behalf of Charlene, our staff writer here, I wanted to thank you all for joining us. A little different sort of get together, but we appreciate the opportunity to talk about the town that we all love. And before we get into our questions, just want to tell you all how wonderful it is to see so much activity in the town of Berlin. And we have to have 5 candidates for the mayor's race is pretty much unprecedented. And, you all know, you've been here long enough, I think, to know that sometimes we haven't had elections, sometimes we've had uncontested races. So it's wonderful to see so much activity. And, really the goal tonight is to inform and educate our viewers and to let everybody know where you stand, and an opportunity to have you all in one setting, so virtually. So in your comments tonight, we just had a couple things we wanted to, boilerplate things. We just ask you to be respectful and courteous. And, generally we're going to ask you to keep your responses to about a minute. In your introduction, we're going to let you kind of go for it. If you keep it around 2 minutes, just in the interest of trying to get through. We do have quite a bit of questions on our end. And, we had over 80 citizen questions as well, half of which we are going to be addressing anyway. Some were duplicates, so don't be overwhelmed, but we'll have some time for citizens, and we'll do our questions first, and then a break, and then we'll come back to do the citizens. Okay. All right.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Sure.
I don't see Ron on my screen.
Do you go to how about gallery view? Do you see?
Well, I see everybody but Ron, and I just have a blank space.
Well, he's here. We all see him. I'm sorry.
As long as everyone else can see him.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, the order of tonight, we did this randomly. So we're going to start with the candidate introductions. We're going to go with Jennifer first, and followed by Bill. And if you could just, Jennifer, tell us a little bit about yourself, your professional background, and if you would also include any civic involvement and how long you've lived in Berlin.
Okay. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Jennifer Allen. My husband and I purchased our home 5 years ago, and following our retirement, we moved to Berlin in April of 2016. I am a registered nurse, and I have extensive leadership and administrative experience. This information is available on LinkedIn, and my name on LinkedIn is Jennifer, and then parentheses, Jenny, parentheses closed, Allen. Following the 2019 decision to raise taxes, I became interested in what has been happening in Berlin and began attending all of the town council meetings, and subsequently decided to run for mayor. Due to the pandemic, I realized that it would not be appropriate for me to go around and knock and talk. So I decided on postcards to reach the citizens of Berlin. So I chose to use every door direct mailing. And I'm going out to the 4 major routes in the Berlin area. Unfortunately, as I have found, the delivery has not been perfect, and many people are telling me that they have not been receiving the postcards. So as an FYI, there have been 3 postcards sent and to date, and a 4th one is coming out next week. So what I want to show you is you should have gotten this first postcard. This is an introduction. The next postcard is all about Heron Park, and then on the back, I talk to you about using quality and Six Sigma tools for process improvement. And then the 3rd postcard that went out is a money jar, and that's about taxes and budget. And on the back, I talk to you about why you should be watching the online council meeting. So if you have not received the postcards, please contact me at jenniferforberlinmayor@gmail.com, and I will get them to you. And thank you very much for sharing this time with me.
Go ahead, Bill, and then Ron, you're on deck. Bill, you could go ahead now if you would.
Oh, okay. I thought you said Ron. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, I'm Bill Todd. I've been born and raised in the area. I've been living in Berlin proper for about 10 years now. Quite frankly, I'm running for mayor just because I'm tired of the way things have been going a little bit. I've taken nothing from this town but great memories and experiences, and I'd like to keep it that way. I've worked in many different capacities all over the place. I've worked in radio for 7 years. I've up till recently have been working for Bireley Oak Brewing Company here in town. So I've been around town long enough to really understand some of the ins and outs of how things go and how some of the things should go. I'm doing this out of the genuine love I have for the town and the citizens in it. And I couldn't be happier to have this opportunity to be before you all tonight. Thank you so much.
Great. Okay, Bill, Ron, you're up, and G, you're on deck.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ron Byerly. I was born and raised just outside of the corporate limits of the town. I graduated from Stephen Decatur High School and eventually went into the military, where I served 8.5 years on active duty in the United States Army. 2 of those years I spent as a Republic of South Vietnam. When I retired from the military, I went to school and got my undergraduate degree and then my master's degree. And then I went to work for the town of Berlin. I was administrative director for approximately 5.5 years. I followed that with a tour as a council member. And then I was elected as mayor, and I was called back in a special vote by the council to a second term as mayor, albeit it was a part-time or it was a shorter term. And then I was director of finance for approximately 14 years.
Okay, thank you very much. G, go ahead, and Zach, of course.
I was born and raised in Berlin. I spent most of my life here, except for the years that I attended college or served in the U.S. Army Reserve as a staff sergeant. I graduated from Chesapeake College in Y Mills with an associate's degree, and then I earned my bachelor's degree in business and journalism at the University of Maryland, College Park. My wife, Betsy, and I have been residents of the town of Berlin now for 46 years. My daughter, son-in-law, and grandchildren are also lifelong residents of Berlin. For 30 years, I've enjoyed a career as a local newspaper journalist, editor, and publisher. Since that time, I've served as the community liaison for the State Highway Administration and the marketing and development director for the Community Foundation of the Eastern Shore. For the past 12 years, I have devoted my lifetime of experience to serving as the mayor of the town of Berlin. I believe that prior to that, I served 4 years on the town council. So I've started covering the Berlin Mayor Council as a reporter and editor, and have spent the majority of the Monday nights of my lifetime in town hall. First reporting as a journalist, and then later as a town councilman and mayor. I'm seeking election, and I'm seeking your support to serve one final term as your mayor for the town of Berlin.
Zach, go ahead, bud.
I want to thank the Dispatch for hosting this virtual forum and for the important opportunity for the Berlin residents to be able to hear from all 5 of the candidates running for mayor. I also want to thank everyone that's tuning into the forum and taking an active role in this election. Your voice, your participation, and your vote truly do matter. As Steve mentioned, my name is Zack Tyndall, and I'm running to be your next mayor. I'm a lifelong resident of the town of Berlin, a homeowner, husband, father, 4-year council member, and a dedicated public servant to the town of Berlin. My service to Berlin began 16 years ago as a cadet with the Berlin Fire Company and progressed into a career serving many of you as a firefighter paramedic. I have a master's degree in business administration and a bachelor's degree in management and finance. As your council member, I've worked diligently to make sure the people of Berlin have a voice in their local government. I have also stood up for my constituents and have not been afraid to ask questions and do research. When we experienced a double-digit tax increase by the current administration, I was the only council member to propose a path forward that didn't involve raising your taxes, all while not cutting jobs or services. The question that every voter needs to ask themselves on October 6th is, what type of town do we want to be, and what kind of future do we want to build together? As Berlin's next mayor, I want our town to be a safe, financially sustainable, and well-maintained community. For too long, our town's focus has centered around the downtown area. Berlin goes beyond just Main Street. We have many vibrant neighborhoods that make up Berlin, and we need a mayor that can bring us all closer together. I ask for your vote and your support on Tuesday, October 6th.
Thank you very much. All right, we're going to dive right into our questions here. As you all know, you all received the topics that we want to discuss tonight ahead of time. But I will say we had some news break on Friday that we need to talk about and get everyone's viewpoints. So I don't think it's a surprise that we're going to talk about this issue, but we'd like to get everyone's viewpoint. So last Friday, September 11th, the town of Berlin announced that it would be canceling the Berlin Christmas parade, as well as the New Year's Eve ball drop, as well as not holding the official tree lighting illumination ceremony, but there would be events that night. The same release, modifications to the next month's Oktoberfest were outlined. Do you support the town's early decision to not hold the annual Christmas parade and New Year's Eve event? We'll start with Gee Williams because he was involved in the decision, of course, as incumbent mayor, and then we'll go to Zack, who'll be next.
Yes, I had the final responsibility of making that decision, and I stand by it. The pandemic has been something that has been an unusual and unpredictable situation since it began months ago. As I've said from the beginning, I think that our approach has been to not be extremely in any way, and try to find a middle course while also erring on the side of caution whenever it's a tough decision. And I believe that's just what's called for here. The Berlin Christmas Parade attracts thousands for years, has attracted thousands of children and family to our streets. You can't even walk down either side of Main Street for most of its length. There is no way to do appropriate social distancing and to make it safe as long as this pandemic still exists. We have done so well as a community so far. I don't see that we should reverse course at this time. I also believe that the New Year's, we are looking at an alternative to the ball drop, because the ball drop is also very massively crowded, but in a smaller space. What we're looking at is having fireworks on the New Year's Eve, early in the evening, not at midnight, so that children and families can enjoy it from their home or in cars. We're looking at having the fireworks at the county ball fields on the south edge of town. Same thing, Oktoberfest, where we're changing the format significantly from in the past. We're basing it on the successful Peach Day that we had back in early August. That worked out very well for everyone. People really enjoyed it. So we're going to use the Oktoberfest in a similar way. Oktoberfest is not a children's event. It's be spread out. And I think that the success of Peach Day gives me hope and a strong expectation that that format will work for that one-day event.
Thank you. Go ahead, Zack, and then we'll go to Jennifer.
Well, Steve, I think this is a great opportunity to be able to understand the role of the mayor and the position that we're all vying for. So as a council member, yes, I do have a role in approving the town events like we did last night during our regular scheduled mayor and council meeting. What happens is those are proposed in September, and then the mayor and council take action. After that, the way that those events unfold and the ability to cancel an event is well within the purview of the mayor. However, when I look at this decision, I do think it's a little premature. I understand that there are some things planning-wise that people need to be aware of, but to me, I mean, we're looking at the 50th, potentially the 50th Christmas parade in the town of Berlin's history. And I've attended many of those as a child and to present day. So to me, Berlin is about Christmas. Berlin is about a vibrant parade. Whether we have to take into consideration that we expand the route and maybe modify the parade so that it meets all the social distancing needs and people can watch from their homes or spread out on the street. That's stuff that we're going to have to evaluate as the pandemic unfolds. But I don't think that decision needed to be made right now. So for me, public health is foremost. Yes, we abide by the governor's mandates. I would say that as mayor, we would definitely do those things in this pandemic and anything else moving forward. But I do think this decision was a little premature.
Okay, Jennifer, and then Bill.
I think that there is a tremendous amount of fear in the community regarding the pandemic and regarding people being in their spaces and not social distancing and not wearing masks. And though I was a little surprised that we canceled it so early, I think that it would be very difficult to control the environment. And maybe there won't be a big crowd because of the fear. Maybe we could have waited a little while to see how many people wanted to sign up to go to the parade. But that's all looking in hindsight as to the decision of what the mayor and the town council did. I can tell you that I have been asked to hand deliver a few cards to people, and then I've been told, now don't get too close, throw them across the fence, don't get into my space. And people were very afraid, and those people definitely wouldn't go to the parade. I'm a risk taker. I'm a nurse for 46 years. I think that I would have gone to the parade. I don't think I would have gone to the Christmas tree lighting, because last year the crowd was overwhelming. There was no safe escape route. I think that just turning the tree on this year is a wise decision. Christmas parade, I go back and forth on.
All right, Bill, and then Ron will jump in. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, personally, myself, the Berlin Christmas Parade is what got me to Berlin. I love the Christmas Parade more than anything. It's something that I cherish, and I have since I was a child. If any event shouldn't be canceled, it's the Christmas Parade in the coldest time of the year, when everybody's got their scarves on around their face most of the time. Maybe a little bit premature. I could see where they were going with it. Maybe a little bit premature. I can understand the concern and everything else involved, but I also understand technology. And I think that if we were to hold the parade and let everyone know that if you don't feel safe to come, then nobody's making you. You're more than welcome to stay home. And we could broadcast it via the town website or wherever the case may be, from a camera right at the judge's podium, so they don't miss a minute. The Berlin Christmas Parade is a huge, huge part of Berlin, and we all know that. It's just, it was a safe call. I don't think it was the best call. That's my opinion.
Okay, Ron, your turn.
Oh, thank you. Well, first of all, I agree with a couple of the other candidates. I think the decision was made way too early. I certainly think that those events are extremely important, and a lot of people like them. And I agree with one other comment that said if the people don't feel comfortable with coming, please don't. Please stay home and be safe. But I think that most of the people that would be at the parade want to be at the parade. And I agree, if I'm elected, I'm going to reverse that decision, and unless there is more information available than what I have seen in the news to date.
Okay, now for a financial question. 2 years ago, property taxes were raised 18% and water and sewer fees were also increased to address revenue shortcomings. Another smaller property tax hike of 4% to 8% was on the table this winter before COVID, and the town announced it would not be raising taxes due to the economic hurdles facing people. If elected, how will you approach the next budget, knowing another property tax increase will likely be proposed by town staff to address underachieving revenue projections? Would you look to alternative revenue sources or cost reductions? We'll start with Bill.
I would initially start with cost reductions. I'm not about to sit here and say that if I was elected mayor that raising the taxes is completely out of the question. I don't think anybody that says that is telling you fibs. Sometimes it's a necessity. Of course, I look at cutting spending first. There's a lot of things that we could get into that, we may be able to save a couple bucks on. But on the same note, I can't sit here and say that raising taxes can't ever happen. I would definitely look into ulterior avenues in order to bring capital, as opposed to raising taxes. The best to my ability. That's the last resort that I'd ever want to do to anybody. But if I did, I would make sure that it's at an incremental rate, and it wouldn't be something that I just smack people on the head with because I made a mistake a while back.
Okay, Jennifer?
Well, I broke it down into budget and taxes. So first, I would like to say that many people in Berlin have said to me, where has all the money gone? And I think that the town needs transparency as to where the money has gone. So I plan to do an extensive review of the 2021 budget to determine what is allocated and if there are items that can be eliminated or reduced. I plan to have a monthly report sent out to all of the citizens on town expenditures. And I don't have a date for that yet because it's going to take me a little while to get everybody to understand what it is that I would want in this report and how I want it delivered. I will be doing a 12-year review of all of the past budgets and the books and determine where all the funds were spent each year. And I'm going to send a report out to the citizens on that. And this may take a little longer to get implemented, but it is definitely in my plan. I will be requesting a salary review and compare it to all of the towns of comparable size and amenities. And we will also need to have a full equipment and vehicle review, the department they are assigned, the purchase price and the date, as well as the estimated dates for the replacements of these pieces of equipment. Regarding the tax increases, as of now, I want to place a hold on any tax increase until the budget audits can be completed. I want to do a full process review of every department where I will be looking for inefficiencies that can be corrected and ultimately save money. I plan to go out into each department and work with the crews to see where they are spending their time and garner information on what we could do to increase efficiency, eliminate redundancy, rework, and contract usage. And I will be asking them the question, why do we do it like that? There will be a full contract review. If it is something we can do, why are we contracting it out to someone else to do it for us? We will be looking at advertising all of the upcoming contracts to get better pricing and canceling those that we no longer need. Just renewing a contract is not acceptable. They should be evaluating these contracts and making them open for others to bid on them. We also need to determine if our grant writers are adequately trained to get the most out of future requests. And please remember, everyone, that if we submit for a grant, we have to have town money up front to go against the grant. There's always a percentage that has to come from the town first. So we have to look at the budget to find out what kind of money we're going to have.
Okay, Zach.
So I think in the beginning with your question, you kind of alluded to the fact that a tax increase is inevitable. I don't see that as the case. I didn't see the last tax increase as a necessity either. For me, I think it's important for the people to understand that the role of the mayor is to, 1, set the tax rate, 2, present a balanced budget to the mayor and council. So as the mayor, you really have a lot of control over the amount of spending that's done by the municipality. Granted, there is going to be council review and input you have to take into consideration, but I didn't see the necessity of the previous tax increase. I actually proposed almost $100,000 of surface level cuts that did not involve cutting jobs, did not involve cutting services, and would have allowed us to operate within our existing tax structure. With that said, and one of the other candidates alluded to this, the RFP process for the contracts that we have. 2 fiscal years ago, I asked for a comprehensive review of those contracts, outlining when the last time they went to bid, whether the vendor's in good standing or not, and to really get the town on track to be able to send those contracts out for review. So the follow through for a procedure like that is essential and something that I will be doing as the next mayor. We don't have to look very far for like a secret sauce. The Government Finance Officers Association, GFOA as it's called, has several pathways that we can go down to be able to look at the different cost saving measures for the town of Berlin. And that'll allow us to be able to take some of that overspending and direct that into replenishing our reserves. So I don't see the town as having a revenue problem per se. I see it more as a spending problem. So.
Okay, Ron.
Well, first of all, I would tell you that I am not afraid of raising taxes if it is necessary. However, my personal feeling is that the budget increase or the tax increase that we recently had last year was unnecessary. And I firmly believe there's enough fat in that budget that we can reduce that. And I have promised the people of Berlin that if elected, I am going to reduce the taxes.
Okay, G.
No one wants to raise taxes at any time, anywhere. But the reality is that just maintaining a level of service, expenses go up, not down. The town of Berlin, we've not just been maintaining services over the last several years, we are clearly improving them. The tax rate had not been increased for 12 years. In fact, it had been lowered once under my administration. The idea that you can somehow cut these essential services and still have the same level of service, it's just, it's dreamland. It's not real. Our folks work very hard. They do a very good job. When we compare the services and response time and to communities that even larger than us, we're doing very well. So I think a lot of this has to do with not only doing a much better job in the 21st century, we've been doing a much better job in public safety. We provide a safe and charming town. I don't think there's much debate about that. We have a strong and stable economic development base in our community. We have a strong, prosperous town, and we have affordable and reliable electric power. We have some of the cheapest rates in the Mid-Atlantic region. I think that any idea that you're going to come in and cut, let's say $100,000 or more is just not realistic. And it's just a dream, and it's a nice idea, but it's not reality. I think new residents and families are moving to Berlin like never before. I know they are. And they're not choosing Berlin because it has the lowest tax rate. They're choosing it because Berlin has the level and what we call the quality of life here is unmatched in this region. I think that quality of life is to be preserved, protected, and enhanced by your mayor. And that is the message I've been getting loud and clear for years. I do not see that changing in the foreseeable future. I also do not see a tax increase being needed in the foreseeable future. Eventually, yes. But right now, the idea that we're in some financial crisis is not true. We have significant money, over $1 million just in reserves. And we'll get into that probably more later.
Okay, yeah, it's actually a great segue there because reserve policy is what we want to talk about next. So the town council has been discussing the creation of a formal revenue policy like other municipalities for about the last year. The town's auditors have told the town it's needed to avoid emergency shortfalls, as was discovered a couple of years ago when it was realized that staff was borrowing funds from reserves to pay for shortfalls in the utility funds without the mayor and council's knowledge. So proposals from staff for a formal reserve policy call for about 3 months of general fund operations currently with reserves for capital projects, debt reduction, and disaster response. It's very much still on the table, as you all that are sitting council members and mayor know. Do you support the creation of a formal reserve policy for the town? And how do we begin growing that reserve to a suitable reserve level? We'll start with Ron and then go to G.
All right, frankly, I would tell you that before I would ever vote for such a thing, I want to know who is going to control and under what circumstances can money be expended from that account. I don't want to create a slush fund for a lot of fun and toys. No, we've got to have complete control over that fund, if you will.
Okay, G, and then we'll go to Zack.
Well, first of all, the idea that we we already have a reserve fund policy. It was passed this summer, and it was not done during the budget process. We wanted everybody to get the budget process squared away and then review that as a separate item. We have, I think, a very responsible reserve fund policy. It's been suggested by some candidates that we only have a few $1,000s in reserve funding. In reality, we have commitments in both assigned and restricted funds. So the money is available when it's needed. And this is done so the mayor and council do not make a public commitment to get something done, and then there's no money to do it. Currently, our assigned budget funding is just over $2 million. We also have funding ready in interfund loans, slot revenues, impact fees, healthcare, disaster recovery, and annual debt reduction of an additional $1.8 million. This idea that we only have a few $1,000s handy is not true. The tax increase put us back on course to continue to being the very special town that we are. The reserves will be built up over a period of about 15 years, 18 years, depending on how things go in the economy. But the idea that we need to somehow have big slashes in the operation of the town is just not true. I can't imagine where we've had reserves. We use reserves when they're needed. We're building them back up, but we have money set aside for the major projects that people have been promised.
Okay, we'll do Zach and then Jennifer.
Now, Steve, the mayor just said that we have a reserve policy in place, and I don't know if that's factual. I know that there's been one that's been discussed, but to my knowledge, the mayor and council have not passed a formal reserve policy. We've discussed that, but it's not been passed. It's been sent back for revisions. So I think that's an important distinction to make here. And when we talk about a reserve policy, policy means action. It mandates action. In fact, during that discussion period of a reserve policy, the town attorney said, look, you can't legally bind future mayors and councils with a policy. So the issue here for the people to understand is that we started with over $8 million in reserves in 2008 when Mayor Gee Williams took office, and we're down to $16,000 in our unassigned or expendable reserves. That's a really, really low amount for running and operating a municipality. This is looked at as like an emergency fund. If something were to occur, you need to be able to have the money to be able to pay for those things that aren't budgeted. And we only have 16 grand in that account, and that's 1% of what is recommended. There should be $1.5 million in that account. So an important distinction to make is that the reserve funds are kind of categorized into two different areas. You have unassigned reserves, which is the emergency fund if we were to need it. And then you have things that are restricted by policy by the mayor and council. And those things are, like the mayor mentioned, slot money. You can only touch that with certain parameters. The community centers also fit within that basket. And impact fees, which we just recently used a little bit of that money to help offset some of our street costs. But it's important for the people to understand that those funds have been used. The $8 million or north of $8 million that was there, they were used to subsidize the sewer fund at a time when true action was needed to correct the overspending in that department. And then there was a series of several $1 million that was used to pay for the police department out of that fund, in essence, cash for a long-term capital project that should have been financed. And then there was also some money that was used to help bolster some of the salaries for the employees. So the first and foremost issue is to build back those reserves.
I feel like I need to step in here and just clarify this issue because I am looking at an article from late July where it was the Berlin officials here need for reserve fund policy from the administrator, Jeff Fleetwood, and the finance administrator. So can we clarify this? Gee, you said there is a formal reserve policy. Can you address that? Because Zach made the argument.
Yeah, and I think it's a matter of understanding where we are and where we're going. Yes, we want to have a more specific reserve policy that says what has to be done with what I'll call uncommitted reserves. We already are setting aside reserves and have for the last several years in setting aside reserves for specific needs and projects. That's something most towns don't do. They just dump everything in the reserve fund, and then they're never sure if they have the money they need when they go make a commitment to the public, such as for a community center. It's just one example, but the idea that we're, the slot money has to be handled only for public safety. So it was, again, a judgment call, rather you take the slot money and go out and borrow money and pay it off, which is what we're doing with the slot money, which is exactly what it's supposed to be for, or do you go out and then borrow money as a town and then, just try to figure out where we're going to pay it from. The slot money is used primarily for public safety. So I think it was a very good use. That police department should have been replaced 30, 35 years ago at least. And I make no apologies for the fact that we finally have a state-of-the-art, appropriate police station to help our community be a safer place.
Okay, great. All right. Go ahead, Zach. You want to rebut, then we'll go to Jennifer.
Yeah, but I think it's an important distinction. The policy that you're citing from the July article is still in draft form. So it's not, there is no formal reserve policy per se. And it should almost be renamed a reserve goal. And the goal should be to adopt the GFOA standard, which is $1.5 million. And I don't disagree with the mayor that we needed a new police department. Anybody that walked in there over the past couple decades knew that police department that we had at Town Hall wasn't suiting the needs of the public. However, what we're here to talk about is the fact that those reserve funds, the unassigned reserve funds, have been drastically reduced and depleted over the past 12 years. And that project should have been funded with a capital plan, and that should have been financed.
Okay, thank you. Jennifer, go ahead, and then after she's done, Jennifer, Bill, you can jump in.
Okay, well, I think that you need to know that establishing a reserve policy is considered a best practice. The purpose of the Berlin Reserve Policy should be to provide budgeting that is unexpected. And the question is how much you should keep in the reserve fund. So Zach has mentioned the Government Finance Officers Association. They recommend that you should have a formal policy on the level of the fund balance to be maintained. They also recommend that the minimum is 16.7% of the general fund revenues, or what would be equal to 2 months of the operating expenses. On other sites, I found that they recommended from anywhere from 8% to 50%. I think that Berlin should look towards increasing the reserve funds to at least 3 months of the operating expenses, and that would make it that we would have 25% of the general fund set aside for emergencies. Now, my rationale for doing that is that if we have another major problem with the storage treatment plants, or if we have a problem with one of these water towers or whatever, then we would have funds available without impacting the general fund and any of the other restricted budget items.
In my opinion, I think that reserves are reserves. They're exactly that. They are not to be touched unless it's an emergency situation. They are not to be touched without the consultation of the citizens of Berlin. The fact that this much money has been misappropriated, in my opinion, speaks volumes as to why we need change this election. That's all I have to say about that.
All right, another divisive issue facing the town is growth in the form of commercial and residential development. There are several projects, including a hotel and convenience store project at the Main Street intersection with Route 50 on land annexed by the town, and a potential apartment building complex on North Main Street in the news that will alter the look of the town. What is your position on future growth in Berlin? We'll start with Zach and go to Bill.
So you're right. There have been several annexations, many annexations over the past 12 years. And over the past 4 as a council member, I voted against every single one of them. And I voted against them because I knew that the costs that we're charging out as a municipality are not equitable. They're not covering the full cost of what it takes to bring on somebody new into the town of Berlin. We have a water and sewer treatment plant that is at or near the capacity where we're going to have to start the building and planning phases. So with that, that fund currently has roughly $13.5 million in debt on the books. In order for us to do an expansion, that's going to take more money, and we're talking in the millions. So with that being said, the only way that we're going to be able to do that within the fund is going to be to raise water and sewer rates. And that has been proposed, and I don't know if that's the best path forward. And when we look at the EDU rates for us as the town of Berlin, we're the highest relative to our peers. So competitive wise for the town, we really need to look at the cost structure of each annexation, what the true revenue source is going to be for the taxpayers, and how that's going to affect the town as a whole. If we look at each annexation is different, but the electric utility, if we annex new properties, those properties are not generally able to go onto our electric service. So what that does, if you take Oceans East, for example, it creates a real imbalance when you're looking at how the fund is run, because you in essence get potentially several thousand or so people in Oceans East that could dictate how the electric plant is operated, but have no skin in the game. They don't pay the same electric that we do. So you have to really look at each annexation and whether there's a better way to move forward. I've stood by as a council member the fact that we can grow from within and we can sustain the growth from within, use the existing water and sewer lines, use the existing electric utilities that run past these properties. And it's a bigger value add for the people of Berlin. So as the next mayor, I'm going to look at maximizing what we can do within before we start expanding any further.
Okay, Bill and then G.
I personally think that, and I agree with Zach on that point. I do. I think that every annexation should be looked at separately. I also think that, on both sides of the argument of annexation of property, and it's been a very hot topic lately. You also, with the annexation, you kind of control. We have a little bit more control of what can happen within the town limit. That takes a little bit away from the county at that point, and we can kind of control what we want to do. I could say take it all case by case, but on the same note, I'm not adamantly against annexation, especially if it means protecting what we already have to that respect. So I like to look at both sides of the coin, and to be perfectly honest with you, my opinion really doesn't matter on this subject. I'd do whatever the public would want me to do at this junction, because I know it's a very hot topic right now, and there's a lot of people that don't want to see any growth. But on the same note, you have to understand that in order to maintain our way of life here, money needs to come in. So, there's two sides to that coin, and as I said before, it requires a lot more discussion, especially with the public, and those are the people that I'm here to defend myself.
Okay, G and then Ron.
Well, we're talking about obviously annexation, and I think something that needs to be understood by folks not only running for office, but also who are going to be doing the voting early next month, is that Berlin both needs residential and commercial development. This is not about approving anything, anywhere. It's about putting the right things in the right places. Without measured incremental growth, the citizens of Berlin will face two disturbing alternatives. Within only infill development, which I understand some people think that would be the solution to everything, either of two things will happen. Because Berlin's property tax base will be basically stagnant. There will be a steady decline in the quality and availability of town services for all citizens, businesses, and property owners. Or to keep our town's quality of life, we will have to raise property taxes regularly, which is not something we do, and to keep up just with growing inflation and expenses. That means that the transformation of longtime residents and businesses moving out of town, while more affluent people move in who can't afford the higher rates. Over a few years, Berlin will become a community only affordable to the well-to-do, but responsible growth keeps that from happening. This is a reasonable and responsible growth is good for our community, and not only today, but in our future. And I think it's a matter of annexing at the right time, in the right place, for the right thing. And I think that's what we've been doing, and we need to continue and come up. I'd like to see boundaries that are set up for where we should be in 20 years. Where should we aim for 50 years, and where should we be by the end of the century? And then in those plans to have what I call growth boundaries, so that we know where the areas are that we want to grow. This also eliminates the conflict that we would be otherwise creating. Whereas you think the county is going to say no to businesses and residential development immediately next to town if Berlin does not responsibly annex those areas. That's how sprawl happened in the last century between Baltimore and Washington. The towns didn't annex, so the counties just built right around them, and you can't tell where one town begins and another one ends. So I think that's all something that needs to be taken into account here. And it's not a simple situation. You have to look at each annexation separately. I think we all agree on that. But the idea that annexation is either all good or all bad is just too simplified. And I think that we have a good track record there, and I'd like to see us continue.
Okay, Ron, and then Jennifer.
I'm not against annexation at all. In this particular case that you're discussing, those two projects are coming in. We should be able to control those projects. We know what's coming. So consequently, if we know what's coming, we can control them. We should be charging them. We should be taxing them appropriately. One thing that I wish to point out, if someone wanted to locate to this area and put something undesirable up to next to our border, they could do it through the county if it was zoned for that purpose. So consequently, I think if anything, we want to expand just a little bit more so that we control that and do not permit that to happen.
Okay, Jennifer.
Well, I don't know if you all know this, but I'm one of the people that walked that annexation petition around last year. So we need the town people to have more of a say and not be dictated by the local good old boys network and the county. I agree with Mr. Cassio whenever he did his recent article in the Dispatch, when he said that the town needs to have a proper discussion regarding growth. And I quote him as saying, "It is true that we have the water, the power, and the sewer, but we also have some power as the people of Berlin." So if we are unable to do a public forum, perhaps we need to mail out a survey or use SurveyMonkey to get the feel of the community members, because annexation affects everybody in this community. And this community should be able to make a discussion and decide for themselves what they would like to see happen to Berlin. I would also like to investigate what properties are available within the town that have yet to be developed, because we have spent all this money to get them in and annexed, but I don't see them building anything. So I'd like to know what properties are sitting there undeveloped, and what the plan is for when they're going to be developed. And we also need a full review of the water and the sewer capacity before we continue with any more annexations, because as Zach said, we do not have the funds to bring in more water and more storage to this town at this point in time.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to move on now to Heron Park. So the town of Berlin purchased a 60-acre land that we know today as Heron Park in 2015. Uses currently at the site include bird watching and a hiking trail of sorts. The town recently struck a deal with Byerly, a brewing company, to lease some space on the property for parking and business operations. We do know there's an active committee overseeing the park as an advisory group, but it's certainly no secret that the park has been controversial, especially in light of last year's costly chemical spill. I'd like to get everyone's opinion on the town's purchase of the property. Was it the right move? What would you like to see happen at the park? We'll start with Jennifer and then go to G.
Okay, so as you know from my postcard, that's one of my topics. So with inflation, it is going to cost this town $8 to $10 million to correct all of the problems that exist on that property. And I am wondering, and if you're wondering how I got to all of these figures, the town commissioned a study on the ponds, and my reference is EA Engineering Science Technology Incorporated, and it was dated in August of 2017. The title of the study is Remedial Investigation and Cost Estimate for Waste Lagoons of the former Tyson Foods facility. They came up with 2 remediation alternatives to address the sediment that is in the wastewater in those ponds. And what they want to do is they want to remove the sediment, they want to dewater the sediment, and then they need to dispose of the sediment. Both of those alternatives came up to $6.8 million. Now you have the administrative building structure that needs to be evaluated if it has not already been done to determine if it can be used. If we need to tear that building down and plan for a new use, I have, in my research, I have determined that the cost would be over $600,000. Then you would have to have the additional cost of putting in a new building, depending on the size and everything. I didn't even give you an estimate for that. We do not have that kind of money to spend. We would need to win the lottery, or we'd need somebody to die and bequeath us a fortune to tear it down, decontaminate the ponds, and do something that would benefit the town. Amazingly, that postcard has gotten me a lot of email traffic as to what people think that we should do with this area. So one option would be we could rezone that building from a factory status to a commercial area. We could have a survey done of the building and the parking lot. We could portion off a section of the parking lot for the pond area and for a driveway in to get to that area, and keep the pond for walkers, birders, and dog walkers, and sell the building and the partial parking lot. That way we could put the money towards paying off the loan that was taken out for this original purchase. A second option is you continue to pay off the loan, you try to get some environmental grants, and you slowly improve the building and the pond areas, keeping in mind it is still going to take you $8 to $10 million to do this. And all of this is something that we should survey the town on, and perhaps even have a referendum vote for the final decision, because the town people, many of them feel that this was a debacle and they don't want it. I can tell you that I walk in that area. We go over a couple times a week, and sometimes my husband and I are the only people that are parked in that lot and walking around those ponds.
Okay, G, and then Ron, you're on deck.
All right, well, first of all, I think people need to remember why the town bought the property to begin with. Primary reason was because the site had been a chicken processing plant since 1940. And for most of its existence, it was an environmental nightmare. Even when the US government created the Environmental Protection Agency, there was very little that could be done. The problems were already there. Fortunately, Tyson found that it was not cost efficient eventually. Local developers bought it for the purpose of building a neighborhood of primarily single family homes. But when the Great Recession hit in 2008, 2009, that was no longer feasible. The only businesses that were interested in buying the former Tyson property were food operations and their processing operations for either meat or seafood. The town bought the property for 2 purposes. First, to ensure that the private sector would never again use this site for meat processing and all the health and environmental issues that it entailed. And the second was to begin a major cleanup of the property so the northern half could be utilized as a natural park. And the southern half could be redeveloped or provide community activities or for economic development. By economic development, that means we could sell the property to something that is a benefit to the town. We've had some people very interested. They've all taken a look. The first thing to say is, we're not going to invest in rebuilding that building or having to tear it down. The building is the obstacle. So we are now looking and actively looking with the assistance of the county into getting a grant that would take care of the cost of eliminating and not only tearing down the building, but getting rid of the all that stuff that. Are we here?
We're here. It went out for a minute.
Okay, are we back?
Yep, we're good.
Okay, good. Is with the redevelopment of the building, then that can be used as a proper purpose that would help considerably pay down the debt, and you wouldn't have this albatross that's been around this community's neck for longer than I live to continue. And the key next step is the advisory committee basically has two basic concepts. One, to continue to preserve the natural setting around the stormwater ponds, and then to have the area that is what I call adjacent to Route 346 or Old Ocean City Boulevard to be used for economic development and for facilities, particularly for youth, that are not available in the town at the current time. So, you know, when we did this, we made it very clear this was not going to happen overnight. But I think it's a tough process. We have spent a lot of money cleaning up that property, so nobody will ever be able to come in there and again use it for meat or seafood processing, and it no longer is an environmental hazard to anyone. The idea of cleaning up the ponds, that may have been a suggestion years ago, but if we're continuing to just use it as a natural park, that's no longer necessary and saves millions of dollars.
Hey, Ron, and then we'll go to Bill.
All right, I guess I would like to know, first of all, since real estate transactions are mostly done in secret, who came forth to the mayor and council and told them there was a possibility of a seafood plant locating there? And secondly, I would tell you that in my own personal opinion, I'm not sure we needed that. First of all, it came out that we were going to create a park there. We've got a nice park at Stephen Decatur Park. We didn't need this area. I think it was a total boondoggle, and if anything, we ought to possibly get rid of it. Although, if we are going to keep it, then I think we need to move forward to develop it.
Okay, Bill, go ahead, and then once he's done, Zach, you can take it home.
So, when all this started happening, I was adamantly against it. I actually came to the mayor and council. After a while, I kind of warmed up to it, and I wanted to rename it after a local mailman who retired, Mr. James Tyndall, and I wanted to rename it after him and have some fun. And I thought it was nice, as the coolest small town should do, is recognize some people that have done a good service to him. Instead, this is near and dear to my heart, actually. I got ripped apart by the mayor because he thought I had a terrible idea. And this is part of the reason why I'm jumping into this. I love Heron Park, to be honest with you. The way it was all done is extremely fishy. I don't think there's a person in this town, outside the people that were involved with the deal, that would say that, this was a over, above the board deal. Come on, man. I don't believe that for a second. I will say that property is a tremendous opportunity for Berlin. I've witnessed what they've done with Bayside up there with the amphitheater that they've created. I'm a big believer in arts and entertainment and being a driver for tourism and a connective fabric for our community. I see that area hosting, a nice amphitheater where we could have 500 people back there with adequate parking. I also see art installations, maybe murals on the side of the walls that wouldn't cost us a dime, only we have different artists come to us and say, hey, this is this is your space. Let's see what you can do. Let's make the building look good, because it's certainly run down. As you said, Bireley Oak is renting a portion of that building. I've been in there recently. We've done work to make sure that, we're secure in there. But before that, I don't know what has happened. I mean, outside the local kids going in there and spray painting, I don't see any kind of maintenance. And I understand where the mayor said they're not doing anything to upkeep the building. But if you're going to make that much of a purchase with taxpayers' money, the least you could do is maintain it outside. So if we did want to sell it, if everybody came to a consensus that we did want to sell it, the building would be worth something at that point. So there's a lot of oversights with this whole piece of property. In my opinion, I see a tremendous amount of opportunity there, whether it be victory gardens, like I say, the art installations, amphitheater for music and entertainment, just to even hold the farmers market. Not everything has to happen on Main Street. It's a lot easier for us to just go there and do it. We bought that property. Why not use it? I gotta say, outside of a bunch of rules telling you what you can't do back there, there's nothing really to signify that it's an actual park. It could all be handled a lot better. And one of the things that I'm very passionate about, if I become the mayor, I will make that the best space I can make it. Because green space will get somebody coming in from out of town, maybe another hour or two. And that means that they're going to stop in our restaurants. They're going to stop and, buy something from the shops. Anything to retain people in this town is what I'm for. And that park is a tremendous opportunity for us.
Myra? So back when the park was purchased, I was just a resident. And during the public hearing process, I actually spoke out against the purchase of the park. I said, hey, look, Mayor and Council, what needs to happen if you're going to take on $3 million worth of debt, you got to have a clear plan for being able to pay for that. Otherwise, there's going to be potential tax increases down the pike. And what I was told actually by Mayor Williams was that if we're that damn incompetent, then that's what's going to happen. And it was reported by your paper. So when you look at it, I knew as a council member coming on, the property had been purchased. There was little I could do to roll that back. So what I did was try to tackle ways that we could cover that $200,000 debt service that the people pay every year. And what I did was I found a company that was looking to grow algae. And what they do is they needed a certain depth of a pond to be able to control the temperature variations when they're growing the algae. So I brought this before the mayor and council, asked if we could bring them down to be able to take a look at the site. They were exploring this site, and they were exploring a site in Texas. I brought 4 PhDs down from the University of Maryland. We walked the site with the former town administrator and the parks coordinator at the time. They were gung-ho for the site to make it into a place where they could grow algae that would be refined into a fuel, off-site, of course, not in the town of Berlin, and sold throughout the country. They were also looking at being able to use Berlin as a way to be able to teach people from around the world to be able to farm algae. So they had a proprietary technology that allowed them to be able to harvest it. The biggest concern I had was, would it impact anything that we do as residents in Berlin? Would we experience any detriment? And they said no. This was going to be a huge economic driver for the area. Would have sustained with the path of Berlin of being a green municipality. And I was willing to try and take it a step further and see if that fuel that was going to be refined could be burnt in our electric utility department to help satisfy some of the renewable energy credits that we as the town of Berlin have to pay several hundreds of thousands of dollars for every year. But red tape was put in the way of that because I don't think that algae farming really fit with the general premise of where the administration wanted to go. So they ultimately walked away from the deal. But at the end of the day, what we need to know as citizens and as people vying for the job of mayor is that we have $200,000 of debt service on the books every year that needs to be covered for this project. So we need to bring in some economic driver that can satisfy that debt service, or we need to explore selling portions of the park. Those are true, serious conversations that we need to begin having as mayor and council and as a resident body within the town. I think there are a few other important distinctions to make as well. we talked about the parks that the town has currently. Stephen Decatur Park was brought up. We also have Dr. Henry Park over on Flower Street, and we have Burbage Park on William Street. So the town had 3 parks moving forward. And during the initial pitch for purchasing the property, we heard that we don't want this to be another food processing chicken facility. It was actually in the agreement that Tyson sold that couldn't be in place for 25 years after they sold the property. So that wasn't really an issue at the time. That was skirted by the wayside during the mayor and council's purchase process, but I didn't see that as a necessity. Another important thing to mention is that Bill brought up his petition about renaming the park. And yes, Mayor Williams and some of my colleagues discounted his petition because it really didn't fit within the confines of a petition. But Bill brought up a great point, and that was that there needed to be a process for naming public property. So I know that you mentioned, Bill, that the mayor and council were not friendly to you. I was the only nice voice that said, "Hey, Bill, you bring up a really good idea here," and we actually created a policy to be able to rename public property. So I think that's an important distinction.
Mm-hmm. For sure, you were the only one, and I will always remember that, no doubt.
Okay, let's talk about tourism. Aside from this year, when most special events were canceled because of crowding concerns, special events have become a major economic development engine for the town and help make the downtown commercial district a sought-after lease area. The town spends about $93,000, the majority of which is labor costs, to host these special events. Do you support the town continuing to focus on growing current events and bringing more events to town? We'll start with G and then go to Jennifer.
Well, hospitality is one of the 3 primary drivers of the town. Our economic revitalization has been dependent on healthcare, boutique shopping and antique shopping, and of course the restaurants. All these things that are now major drivers of our town economy didn't exist at all late in the last century. So all this has happened in the last 25 to 30 years. It didn't happen overnight, but it's been a steady and very worthwhile endeavor on 3 major fronts that bring good people to our town and create good jobs. I can remember easily when the storefronts were empty or used for storage for multiple generations of Berliners. And we are now providing local jobs and economic vitality to our town. I think it's almost taken for granted, unfortunately, but it shouldn't be, because it took a long time to get here. And since I became mayor, we created an economic and community development office that has and continues to be highly effective way of bringing together partnerships that benefit both businesses and local government. As the local businesses and organizations coordinate our town special events, I think they have a distinct place. Obviously, during the pandemic, we have not allowed anything except what we think is possibly safe and taken one step at a time. But they're part of the driver that not only brings people to town as guests, and guests are a very important part of our economic engine, but many of these people come back, fall in love with the town, and then buy homes here, either year-round homes or part-time seasonal homes. We're very fortunate that we have a planning commission which represents a wide range of views, and that's the way it should be, about development and economic progress in our town. But I think ultimately that we're on the right track. I don't think we have to do anything radically different. We're at the point, and have been for the last 2 or 3 years, where somebody wants to add an event, they must either piggyback with something that's already happening, or something that is weak and fading away is replaced. That's how we've gotten to this point. I don't think it would be wise to make any major change in course in our approach to tourism. Our guests, they come in late in the morning, just before lunch to late lunchtime. They're here until the early evening at the latest. Then everything gets quiet again. And when everyone wakes up the next morning, they wake up to a quiet, very lovely, and very safe and wonderful small town. Then we invite our guests come in, spend money, support local jobs and the economy, and then they leave. To me, I think we have just the right balance, and most communities are not even able to figure out how to get started. So I'm very thankful.
Okay, Jennifer, and then Zach.
Well, I think we should continue the pre-pandemic events when they're permitted, but I would like to add a couple things. I think that the Memorial Day Parade over on Flower Street and the party that they have is a wonderful event. And I would like to add a 4th of July parade and a community picnic on the over on Flower Street at the old elementary school area. And then end the day with the annual fireworks at the ball field or wherever the county and the town decided the fireworks are going to be. I think that that would bring the town together from both sides of 113 and would be a good event for everyone. I'd also like to consider that we have another crab feast, or we could do something like Ocean City does and have a restaurant crab soup cook-off and draw people in that way. But I do agree with the mayor, the events that we have do bring a lot of people into town, and it does assist with the economy.
Okay, Zach, and then Ron.
You echoed. Did you want to?
Sorry, yes, I said Zach.
Yeah, but you didn't say who was on deck.
Then Ron.
Okay. So for me, yes, we spend almost $100,000 a year on the events that we offer currently. As your next mayor, what my intention is going to be is ways that we can find some revenue generation from either the existing events or by augmenting some of those events to help offset some of the costs that the town and the taxpayers are paying. One interesting way with economic development, I proposed early on as a council member that when you look around with electrical vehicles, people coming into town, there's really no charging station. So we, with the police department leaving town hall, we had the ability to use some of those parking spaces that the town already owns to produce some electric vehicle charging stations. I made that recommendation before the mayor and council. And then I even brought forth a vendor that was going to install the electrical vehicle charging stations at no charge, and we'd be able to charge out the rates for that electricity. But what that takes is it's a 45-minute charge time. So it wouldn't be a whole lot, but you have at least somebody coming in to fuel up their vehicle and then able to shop and enjoy our downtown area. And when we take a look at community development, that's another part of the economic and community development that sometimes is underplayed. We have many different neighborhoods in town. We have a beautiful history within each neighborhood. And I think that we have the ability to help produce events that are more comprehensive throughout the town. That's something I would like to see as the next mayor. Another interesting part is the town is really short on funds. So the money that we spend on community development and economic development should be measurable. So if we're going to look at where we're going to spend our marketing dollars, we need to know who our target customer is. That gets back to knowing who to advertise to, so that we're bringing in people that are going to not only visit our shops but spend money, because that's how our store owners are able to stay on Main Street. That's how people are able to pay their bills and make their livelihood. So that's important to me. The other thing is that I think when we look at the development, and we touched on this early on, the annexations and the goal to build up the Route 50 and Route 113 corridor, we need to really look at what that's going to do to our downtown. So currently when people drive into Berlin, they see, oh, welcome to Berlin. But you don't see all these built up gas stations and strip malls saying, oh man, I've seen Berlin. It looks like every other small town I drove through on my way to Ocean City. No, Berlin's different. We have green space. We have a vibrant downtown. So we need to really maintain what we have and make sure that we don't we don't go astray by trying to develop too much of that Route 50 and 113 corridor.
Okay, Ron and then Bill.
I agree with the comment that Zach just made. I think it's important that we should try to see if we could generate some sort of revenue to offset that $100,000. But I will tell you, we need a good downtown area. Mayor Williams even pointed out, when I was hired as administrative director, the first thing they told me was get grants to help the downtown area. Well, there wasn't going to be any grants for downtown area. The government didn't set it up for that project. But we had 3 or 4 businesses in the whole doggone downtown area. Now we're full, and we have a good, vibrant town. It's nice to drive through town or walk through town and see many, many people walking up down the sidewalks. I think it's essential to have a good town.
Okay, Bill.
From my previous position where I was working at Bireley Oak, I could tell you, honest to God, the amount of people that I've told, they come into town, I'm like, do you know that there's a town down the street? They're like, oh, I have no idea. I said, well, go to the light at the end of the road, make a left, and when it looks like a Norman Rockwell painting, you hit the right spot. There's so many people that I've seen come through our business, which is a tremendous economic driver for the town and tourism destination, that don't even acknowledge that there's a town down the road. As a true believer in arts and entertainment, I feel as if we could be an incubator for arts. I know if we were to go down to downtown Main Street right now, within 2 blocks of each other, I could show you 2 of the best tattoo artists in the country. You know, you have got unbelievable musicians. You've got unbelievable paint art. I mean, Patrick Henry's almost, you know, he's been around. Goodness gracious, everybody knows his work. These are the things that will drive people to come to town. We could very well be Maryland's center for arts and entertainment. What I do for a living is I promote concerts. I put on events. The events that I've done at Bireley Oak, I've been very fortunate to have national acts that are on the top level right now. Madison Square Garden has a hard time getting these guys, and I got them 2 years ago. You know, we did pretty good on those shows. And in doing these type of things, yeah, they cost a little bit of money, but you make a lot of money back. These are fresh ideas. These are new ideas. And we have the property to do it. Not everything has to happen downtown. Thank goodness that these guys made a mistake a long time ago and bought that property, because I personally think that we could use it to a great advantage, and it really could drive a lot of tourism to town. I feel like sometimes we are getting stagnant in our marketing approach. You know, the coolest small town thing's kind of worn off. It's time to act on it. It's time to, you know, we have young people moving to town every day. Not all of them like bluegrass. Sometimes it's time to, you know, let's jazz and blues. Let's throw a go-go band in there, or, you know, let's have some different art events. I just feel as if we're getting stagnant in our marketing approach. I feel events are key, and these are things that we can make a lot of money on. Yes, they do cost money, but there's ways around it. There's ways to limit costs, and especially if we do things off of Main Street, I feel like that might help a lot as well.
All right, thank you. Let's move on to short-term rentals. This was a topic that we received about 5 or 6 questions from our citizens. Of course, it was on our list already anyway. But so over the last year, there have been lots of discussions about the town of Berlin creating an ordinance to only allow short-term rentals in certain areas of town and owner-occupied properties. There are currently no short-term rental restrictions in the town, but they are being discussed. This was a question that we wanted to get your stance on. So what's your stance on short-term rentals in Berlin? Should there be regulations and restrictions, and where should they occur? And to start is Zach, followed by Bill.
Thank you. Yes, short-term rentals, they're a vibrant part of the hospitality industry now. And I agree that short-term rentals should be allowed in Berlin, but how we go about applying those regulations is where I think you see a deviation, at least between Mayor Williams and myself. When we originally had a policy come up, it was somewhat rushed. And when you do the research, this has been studied. if you're going to rush through a regulation the way that it was proposed initially, Portland, Oregon tried that, and there was a very, very low compliance rate with their regulations, and it drove a lot of the short-term rentals underground, and they're not regulated. My approach is similar to an approach that Nashville took, and that's a more comprehensive legislation where you bring in the residents' concerns, you bring in people that operate short-term rentals currently. You provide a lot of guidance from the municipality. You work in conjunction with the different professional associations that are related to the real estate industry, one which happens to be right here in Berlin, the Coastal Association of Realtors. They're an industry professional. So we do need to take advantage of this marketplace. It's a great revenue driver for the town. We also need to make sure that it's regulated, one, so that we can collect the money that's needed to offset the inspection costs for something like that, and to make sure that they're safe. So I believe I answered your questions, right, Steve? Was there anything I missed? You're still muted, by the way.
Thank you. No, I think you got it there. Thanks, Zach. Bill and then Ron.
I agree. I agree with Zach on this one. We have to be honest. If we want people to come to town, they need a place to stay. There's only one Atlantic hotel, and nobody's in a big hurry to see a Holiday Inn built. So short-term rentals, it requires a longer conversation in regards of regulations and in penalties, in which in the event that some regulations aren't looked after. It's vitally important. This is the way of the future, so we can't be scared of it.
All right, Ron and then Jennifer.
When I first heard about this, I thought, we're probably moving into an area where we're trying to regulate too much. I'm not a socialist. I don't believe in controlling the people and everything they do. But Zach has some interesting comments, and I think it's something that I'd like to research.
Okay, Jennifer and then Gee.
Well, I tried to listen to the meeting from the 9th of March, and the audio quality was very poor. So then I finally found the minutes, and they were very, very brief. So then I decided, well, I have to make my own decision on this. My personal view is that, yes, we should have short-term rentals. I think that they should have a business license. If there are complaints in the neighborhood, they can be investigated and the business license pulled until corrections are made. If the rentals are not licensed, then they should be fined. If they don't have a business license, then they should be fined for failing to follow the town's regulations. And if they're doing it through the Airbnb website, the rental system, then they have very specific guidelines that are posted regarding the care of the property and the community. And if they're not followed, then you can turn the renter into Airbnb and they lose their ability to lease through them. There should be adequate parking that doesn't create a problem for the neighbors, and the parking should be designated for specific rental properties so that you don't have the whole street taken up by the people that are renting that home or townhouse or whatever. Also, the rental property standards should follow what the building codes are in the town. So if the building is not safe, we shouldn't be permitting them to have a license and putting it out for an Airbnb. And we also need more input from the citizens of Berlin on how they feel about this topic before anybody writes an ordinance or passes it through the town council.
Okay, Gee, your turn.
First of all, I believe Berlin must have standards for short-term rentals, and not to have standards, I think, would be irresponsible to both current and residential and commercial property owners. I oppose banning short-term rentals. That's something I think has been said on my behalf, not by this group, but has been said, and that's not my belief or my stance at all. But I believe reasonable standards and limits are in everyone's benefit. And the county earlier this year enacted short-term rental regulations, and I believe it is prudent for Berlin to follow suit. They're not radical, they're not out there in any way, and I think for us not to have anything on the books is inviting trouble. First of all, I think obviously that's why we postponed it, because of the pandemic and there couldn't be community involvement. I think it's something that needs to be enacted as soon as, certainly before the next year's rental season, which means that it should be on the books before January, so that people doing the renting and the town's enforcement and guidelines can be clear and available to everyone. But I do believe that all short-term rentals that currently exist, because we're not having a problem with them, should be grandfathered in. In other words, if you're there now, you're grandfathered in, but you will need to abide by the new regulations, which are for the safety of the community and for the renters. I think we should have minimum space requirements. I think I agree with the idea that we should have adequate parking. It doesn't have to be a parking lot, but it just means that we shouldn't have streets that we have gone to a great expense on to upgrade and to get parking removed, suddenly inundated with short-term rental parking. There should be licensing, a reasonable license fee, not $15 probably a year, but probably more like $150 a year. And then if there is a problem, then I think that we should also have it clearly delineated as to what time that property should not be available for rent. But I do believe that two different kinds of short-term rentals would be appropriate for our community. One would be the owner-occupied. If you live in a home, the chances that you're going to have any problems is extremely low. And the second, if it's not owner-occupied, then there needs to be a resident agent who is easily contacted, can be contacted on very short notice, and who would be responsible for making sure that the regulations are followed. This is not brain science, but the idea that we held off because of the pandemic, it's not because I think there's a great problem. I think it's something that can be resolved and responsibly enacted in the relatively near future.
Okay, the next topic is parking. In the fall of 2018, the town commissioned a parking and mobility study for $25,000. The results of the study have not been publicly released. Do you believe there's a parking shortage in town, and should government do something about it? We'll start with Bill and then go to Ron.
So something that I agree with Mr. Williams on is a quote that he said a long time ago, and I can't tell you where it's from, but I just heard that he had told me that a while back, talking about parking, is that the major parking problem we had in Berlin was years ago when no one was parking there. I think that the amount of people that we have parking in Berlin, that means that we're doing something good, and I'm tremendously thankful for that. But there is a problem. There is a problem with people parking on the side streets, and it makes it extremely hard for our emergency services to access these streets and get to where they need to go. Those are things that could easily be quelled. We can paint the sidewalks and make sure, hey, you can't park here, that's fine, we can fix that. I would like to propose that we start utilizing more of a satellite parking service between Stephen Decatur Park and Heron Park. We've got a tremendous amount of parking in both of these places, and I think that could easily take a bit of that burden off of us. And it also creates an opportunity for somebody with a business to come on in here and make some money for themselves and their family. These are the things that I'd like to look into. I couldn't agree more with G when he said the major problem with parking is when there wasn't anybody parking here. When you can't find a parking spot, that means we're in good shape. It's just when the emergency services can't get to where they're going, that's the problem. And I feel like if we were to utilize satellite parking and maybe trolley people back and forth, whether we do it ourselves or we contract a company to do it, I think that could really help us out. Okay, Ron, and then G.
Again, I've been around a long, long time, so I certainly remember when, you could park anywhere, any time of day in the town of Berlin. And yes, isn't parking, the lack of it, isn't that a great problem to have? there are municipalities across this country would die to have that problem. And my thought always was that, you know, we could buy property on the outskirts of town. Heron Park could possibly fit into this, and build a parking lot. And then we provide service to transport people down to the downtown area and back again. Small fee perhaps, or could be for free.
Okay, G.
First of all, I agree with everything that's been said about parking by all the candidates. We basically hired the consultants to do, figure out what the demands and future projected needs for downtown parking would be. And they found that we have 11 current parking lots that are open to the public in downtown area. And the key ones, the larger ones, are anywhere between over 90% capacity during the key business hours, as I was talking before, late morning through late afternoon or early evening. The total number of parking places we currently have that's available to public at no charge is just a little over 400. Generally speaking, the parking lots are used mostly between 11 o'clock in the morning till about 6:30 at night. The study recommended the town explore possibilities for how to expand parking because it's not something that's 7 days a week, 8 to 5. It's not just a classic parking situation. It is affected by both not only our guests, but also for our special events when it becomes really critical. I've contacted a local church this summer and who had come up with a very, I think, unique and workable solution to providing more parking for their services. And that is they use matting. It's open so that the matting supports motor vehicles of all sizes, even tractor trailers, but it also allows the grass to grow through. So if it rains or snows, parking lot is still usable and you don't have all the expense of paving over paradise. And I think that we have a number of open lots that are in the immediate accessibility and vicinity of downtown Berlin where this should be looked at. I also think I like the idea and totally endorse the idea of looking at Heron Park as a place that could be used for parking being moved to downtown Berlin, and by having people park at Heron Park and then being picked up by trolley or other service. This could be done either, like I say, very likely through some arrangement where it's provided through a contract. And I think we have some very good possibilities. And I think it's just a matter of, what comes first with so many different challenges and opportunities facing the community at one time. Where do we need to go next? And I think we can do this without, like I said, paving over paradise, without doing that, keeping some very nice green spaces and taking advantage of the proximity of Heron Park where people can enjoy our town and not worry about their vehicles.
Okay, Jennifer and then Zach.
Well, I would like to see some improved signage indicating where the parking areas are, because I've been looking around and the signs are rather small, and the tourists do not seem to be able to see them. I would also like to encourage the town workers to park over in the Church and Bay Street parking lot rather than using all of the street parking around the businesses where they work. The street parking, I think we should make available to the visitors. I would also like to look and see if there's a way that we can expand the parking lot at the Stephen Decatur Park for event and overflow parking, because there's a large green space down there, but I was unaware of the matting that the mayor was talking about, and maybe that's something we could put there. I would also encourage the fire department to put out a boot and to open their lot and their field for event parking, and then they could receive a donation or a fixed fee for people that use their parking area. And the churches could do the same thing. If the churches have a parking lot, they could charge a minimal fee and gain some additional revenue that way. If we keep Heron Park, that's an option where we could demolish the administrative building and pave that entire area for event parking. And then they could either walk or be shuttled to the event. But I am adamantly opposed to parking garages. It will not blend into the Berlin Old World charm. And parking garages are notorious for muggings and theft. And I lived in Montgomery County, and you never park in a parking garage if you could avoid it. Because they're just not safe places. And I don't think we want to ruin the town's ambiance by having a parking garage somewhere in the downtown area.
Okay, Zach.
Yes, I think that this highlights an important issue when you're looking at the way that the administrative governments run currently. When you brought this initial question up, Charlene, you said that the study was commissioned in the fall of 2018, but no findings were published. That gets to the root of an issue. You need to be able to study something, but then when you get those findings back, one, you need to be able to do the action items that are involved in the study. And two, you need to make that information available to the public that paid for the study to be done in the first place. So it's my view that those things should be readily available to citizens. Now, one of the recommendations that came from the parking study was also that we should explore metering, that we have really adequate parking, but we just need to manage that parking more effectively. There's been some great ideas thrown around this evening, and also that we're well within that study of using existing spaces with close proximity to town. But the root of the issue is that we need to manage the parking we have better. I know somebody mentioned that the town employees may park along the streets. We have an agreement with a church that's right down the street, and many of our employees do park there. So I don't know how accurate that information is. However, I do think that the 2-hour parking that we have along Main Street does need to be enforced a little bit better. First, you discuss it as a marketing campaign. You say, hey, look, we're going to begin enforcing the 2-hour rule a little bit more effectively. And then gradually you would roll into citations if that was necessary. But if you begin to use the parking that we have effectively and maybe even consider metering it, that opens up the field for private enterprise to come in and use some vacant land and turn that into a parking lot where they can generate income. It also helps with the faith-based organizations or nonprofits that have lots that are available for them to be able to generate some more contributions in their direction. So I think it's important for us to take a look at managing the stuff we have a little more effectively and opening that possibility up to some private enterprise. The other thing is our town really does not have anywhere for an electric vehicle to charge. And a lot of that space, when you look around, people don't have that ability. So if you're traveling to the area, it's a nice attraction point, and it does keep people in Berlin for a duration of time while their vehicle's charging. We recently brought on some loading and unloading zones in the downtown area that really help with feeding the inventory needs of the small businesses. I think that's important. But I also think that, and Bill might have brought this up, the fact that we need to evaluate the narrow streets that we have. So as a council member, I said, look, we have a trash truck that goes out every day during the week, and we need to take their input in and hear, okay, maybe it's a hard turn on from Grace Street onto Jefferson. And as somebody that's driven an emergency vehicle and a ladder truck around this town, I know that some of our turns are very tight. And you need to make sure that there's an adequate no parking zone around some of these tight turning points. So we really need to take a comprehensive look, bring in the input from the sanitation department and also from our emergency vehicle operators from the fire department.
All right, thank you very much. So we have one question left, and then we'll take a break and get some questions from our citizens. So the last topic that we want to talk about is stormwater. 7 years ago, Berlin formed a stormwater utility in response to chronic flooding concerns that we're still hearing today, of course. The utility is funded by residential and commercial fees. The utility's goal is to use the fees and grants received to fund projects to address the drainage issues around town. Many projects have been completed since this utility was formed. We want to get your opinion on, in your opinion, has this utility been successful in addressing the town's flooding concerns? And do you support moving forward the town's long-range plan? And we're going to start with Ron and then move to Zach.
Okay, first of all, we had, and going back throughout history, of the town of my association with it, we have had problems with what we call the 100-year storm. The bottom line is it always turns out the cost is prohibitive to address a 100-year storm. But there are things that I think that we can do. But recently we've done a lot on the storm drains, but look at the Franklin area avenue. Recently during that storm, the whole area was flooded. I'm not sure how deep the water was, but I did manage to drive my vehicle through, even though there were several other vehicles that had conked out. And we just simply need to look more at it. One of the things I thought was possible was that little stormwater management ponds from the beginning of the northern side of town all the way down throughout the town that would slow the water going out and allow the streets to drain quicker. And so anyway, I think that would be something that I would like to look at. I don't know if it's practical, but at least it sounds good to me.
Okay. Zach, and then we'll move on to Bill.
So I grew up on Grice Street, which is right off of Franklin Avenue. It's one of the main areas where a lot of attention's been placed on the flooding concerns in that area. And I remember the property loss that's associated with the flooding. I know the detriment that comes from not being able to leave your home to go to work. I understand those things. And flooding is a big issue here in Berlin. It's something that we need to take a comprehensive look at in order to address. As a council member, in my district particularly, it encompasses West Street and Henry's Mill and Henry's Green. And there's a lot of flooding that takes place in that area. It wasn't really on the plan to be replaced or to have any investment early on. And I fought for that as a council member. There's some basic stuff that we can do as a municipal government that doesn't really cost millions of dollars. And that comes in the line of maintaining your ditches, taking a comprehensive look at the stormwater ponds that you have. Once we've done that, then you're able to really see where our main investments going to be needed as a town. So I think some ditch management would be the first issue that I would address. And then you also need a way for the residents to be able to report property damage. So currently, if you apply for funding, grant funding, one of the questions you're asked is, what's the detriment of a storm and flooding in your area? And we really don't have an effective mechanism for capturing that data. So we need to implement a way that we can apply for mitigation grants and have tangible amounts of property loss to be able to attach to that grant application. So that's one other thing I want to see as mayor. I also know that here recently we've had a discussion about the stormwater fee and kind of the direction as to where the stormwater fund needs to go. And like you mentioned, it was brought on 7 years ago. The current mayor has discussed an option of doubling that fee. I think that we could operate within the revenues of the fund currently. The initial study when the fund was set up said that there should be a rate of $50 for the equivalent unit for the resident and $50 for the commercial customer. And then the mayor and council prior to me decided that $50 was too much for the commercial enterprise. So they said, all right, we're going to cut that in half. So it's $25, but the resident still pays $50. And this other plan that was proposed by the mayor and the administration was to double the stormwater fee to $100 for the resident and only increase the commercial side of the coin to $35. So you got to look at some equitable fee structure there that doesn't put the whole burden of the fund on the resident. The other thing is that you got to work comprehensively with the HOAs that we have in the area, the property owners that experience the flooding all the time, and the local experts that we have, the people that live this every day. So that would be my approach as the mayor.
Okay. Bill next, and then G.
What I've seen as a citizen and in the work that I've done is that, especially my situation was with the county, and we had a ditch out in front of our business that would constantly overflow, and we'd call the county, and they'd never come out and look at it. And they'd never come out and look at it. And then just things would just compile over time to where we'd have to be like, hey, you have to come look at this. We have a major problem here. If I was the mayor, I'm not afraid of hard work. I've been a hard worker my whole life. I would not mind getting in the truck with these gentlemen and ladies and figure out, okay, this is how it's done. Let's get down there and do it. Clean every ditch that we have. We'll maintain every bit of our stormwater management to the top of its potential because people are frankly tired of it. You know, it takes nothing for a little pond to happen. My grandmother lives on Nelson Avenue. She affectionately calls it Lake Nelson all the time. It's out of control. And, you know, this has been going on forever. And council members could say this and could say that, but, you know, until action happens, we're going to keep on talking about it. I think it is time to bring in more experts. I think it is time to make sure that, you know, we have these guys working. Let's make sure they're out on these ditches. One of the oldest adages I've ever learned in the restaurant business is if you have time to lean, you have time to clean. It's time to get in the truck, make sure that everything's clean.
Right. G, and then Jennifer.
If it was only as easy as cleaning the ditches, that is a very small part of this. We did do an extensive study. We established a stormwater utility in 2016, which was most small towns wouldn't even consider it. And since that time, we have spent just over $2 million in grants and local money raised through stormwater fees that have been spent so far in mitigating this flooding. And something I think everyone needs to know is we started in the east side of Berlin and we're working our way west. And that's because all the water from rains and storms drains to the east towards the bays and tributaries. That's always been that way. We're not going to change gravity. We're not going to change the topography of Berlin. So we are at Graham, Grice, and Nelson. That is our next step. It's a stormwater pond that was built next to the dispatch this past year. During this year, is as much as you can do with creating stormwaters to temporarily hold the water so that natural infiltration can then clean the water and allow it to move naturally towards the coast. What has to happen there, particularly, and to get across Main Street, is to put in a whole system of large stormwater drainage pipes. There's no way around it. We're not going to tell people you've got to give up your backyards and we're going to be putting stormwater ponds in your private property. No, that's a temporary spot where there's no other alternative. And that's the next part. And we have to apply for different grants. And we are seeking different grants that will support that kind of infrastructure, not the stormwater management infrastructure that we've been working on. Once we do that, then we'll be able to work on the west side of Main Street. This is nothing that we are not aware of. The key is finding the money and doing it in a logical way where you do not move the flooding from one spot to the other, but you eliminate the flooding wherever you address it and then move to the next area. The very first place, in my opinion, and again, I think the studies have done this once we get across Main Street, is West Street area. I've seen the flooding there. I go down it, I'm not, not from somewhere that I've never seen any of this. I go down and drive through my Jeep and I can see where people, it should have never happened, but these are different times and we're addressing them. And it's not cheap. I keep going back to the thing. You can only do so much with good intentions. Ultimately, it takes public investment. And we get many times more in grant money than we get in the money we put up. But I want to give you an example that I think everyone needs to recognize in this town, regardless you're talking about stormwater grants, or you're talking about grants for any kind of other infrastructure or anything the town needs. You can have a great plan. It can be wonderful. You take it to the state or federal agency that is appropriate for handling that, and they say, okay, this is a wonderful plan. Now, how much money are you bringing with you? How much money are you putting up? And most small communities say, oh, we don't have the money. And they say, that's fine, it's a wonderful plan. Now get in line. And that line begins in Alaska. When we apply for a grant in this town, under my administration, we are never farther back than 4th or 5th. And if it doesn't come that year, it usually comes within 2 or 3 years at the latest. That is something other towns are looking at us and saying, how do you do that? So it's not about who you know, it's about how much you're willing to invest in your own community. And I think that's something that everyone who's running for office and everyone who's voting needs to understand. The mayor is a mayor, not a magician. And I do not create money through magical hoax. We create money by pooling the resources that we have in this town to address the most immediate needs that will take care of current problems, but also prevent those problems from existing for future generations. And we've been doing a lot. And I'm sure people are, sometimes wondering, why does all this money have to be spent? Because the problems have to be resolved. And we also have many opportunities. And I think in this election, people will have to decide, are we on the right track or aren't we?
Okay, Jennifer.
Well, I think we should proceed with the environmental study plan that was presented at the town council meeting on the 11th of May. And in that presentation, to finish off the project, it will take $3.7 million. But that $3.7 million is going to need the front end backing of the town to get the grants to cover the rest of the process, as the mayor said. Now, I would like to take a small step while we're trying to figure out how we're going to get the money to put up in front of the grant and proceed. And I would recommend, as the other members did, that we go out and we clean out all of the swells and the ditches to facilitate the flow during the heavy rains. And one of the things that I've noticed, because I'm a big walker and I walk all over this town, is that a ditch that goes uphill does not drain. And there are a lot of ditches that are going uphill. They may not have started out that way, but people have planted grass and done other things and have changed the elevations of the ditches and the swells. And so that instead of them going down towards where the drainage pond is, they might go up and then down and then up the whole way down the street. So we need to do some, probably some surveying on that and get somebody out there with some shovels and knock some of those high spots off and do some things ourselves to help get that flow of water going. And once we finish with this plan that's in place, then I think we need to look and see what other areas need more work. Because I don't think that all of the areas of flooding have been covered in this plan.
All right, wonderful. So what we're going to do now is we'll take a break. I'm going to pause the recording, and then if everyone let's get a couple minutes, and we'll come back and go to citizen comments. Okay? Thank you.
Needs to know what the facts are, and just in the past 4 years alone, Berlin's grants to the Berlin Fire Company for firefighting and EMS services has totaled $1,950,000, or an average of $487,500 a year. This is a much larger average annual grant from any incorporated community in Worcester County except Ocean City. During the same time period, grants from Snow Hill are $110,000 a year, Pocomoke $150,000 for fire and EMS, fire, and Ocean Pines, which has a year-round population of over 12,000 people, year-round averages $400,000 a year. You can see that Berlin's average grant of $487,500 per year is the highest of all Worcester County's mainland populations. The Berlin Fire Company says they need an additional $200,000 each year to provide 2 additional paid EMS staff. The town's position is that a significant percentage of EMS calls in Berlin is a result of transient traffic on US 50 and US 113, which both intersect our town's borders. Berlin residents and property owners should not be responsible for paying the emergency calls for traffic that is passing through the 2 interstate highways that are in our town. The additional demand for these EMS services should not be paid for by Berliners. The town of Berlin should not be expected to make up for an additional $200,000 for EMS. The growing cost of emergency medical services in Berlin and other local communities should be the responsibility of Worcester County. There should be a unified system. It is my position as mayor that Berlin and the other mainland communities require that a plan for shared cost between all of us and Worcester County be jointly studied and a permanent funding solution be reached. We need a funding system that meets the needs and demands of today and the future, not from a time that belongs in the past. This system has been cobbled together, and quite frankly, Berlin is the most generous per capita and the most generous as a percentage of our budget of any community in this region. And yet we're being made out to be the bad guys because we just won't keep coughing up additional 100,000 here, 200,000 there, and on and on. And, you know, it's just not financially feasible when there is a solution that is commonplace in many places on the Eastern Shore, just not here in Worcester County or in Wycomico and Somerset. Those 3 counties were behind in addressing this issue, and it's better to put it out there than to pretend that there's no problem.
Okay, Zach, before you go, I need to read this question again because I did not unpause the question. Gee's answer is on the record, but I just need to read this question so our viewers, when they watch this later, they will understand. The question was involving Berlin Fire Company, and there were 2 questions, and I want to read it again, and then we'll go to Zach, okay? So Gee answered this question, so apologize for the awkwardness here, but I just want to make sure that the question is on the record. The town had public forums and developed a strategic plan, and goal was to establish a funding formula for EMS services. The current elected officials and administration paid for a study that reiterated the need for additional EMS funding. The current elected officials and administration has done nothing but place blame first on the local EMS and now say it's a county problem. As a newly elected mayor, what is your plan to adequately fund the EMS services for the town? Since this was an established goal in 2015, we are now in 2020, a formula has not been established. Another citizen wrote, are you aware that in early 2021, the funds will run out, causing response delays or even next due departments having to respond into Berlin due to staffing cuts and volunteers having to come in and take calls? So both questions, I want to know, where do you stand on funding solutions and support for the services the fire company provides and its citizens? So again, I apologize for that. Zach, if you want to take that one now.
Yes, thank you, Steve. I think I understand both questions, but if I deviate or don't answer them, please let me know. But first of all, I think that lumping the administration as a whole is probably not the best way to look at this. As a council member, I have worked diligently with the fire department. I've been an open ear, an open line of communication between their leadership and the town. And I support funding them. The Berlin Fire Company holds a special place in my heart. I grew up there as a kid and worked there professionally for a very long time. So the services that they provide through a combination of career and volunteer staff, I mean, that's instrumental in what we do as a local government. You need to keep the public safe, and that's through police, fire, and EMS protection. So I do support adequately funding them. With that being said, I think there are ways that we can work together to make sure that if we annex a parcel of property, that the fire department has a seat at the table and says, hey, look, this annexation is going to impact our demand for services, and this is what we think we need. They need to be in at the early phases of those things, and currently that doesn't always take place. The other side of the coin is that there are certain things that the town does, such as employee benefits and retirement and things of that nature, that we can help the fire department lower some of those costs that they have for their career personnel. And that's a huge cost saving. So we might not be able to increase, we've talked about the financial constraints of the town. We might not be able to increase drastically our contributions, but we can help make every dollar we're going to give go as far as it possibly can. And we do that by working with the fire department. The other side of the coin is that we talk about this possibility of funding running out in 2021. Here recently, what we've done is implemented a contract for services. So at the beginning of each fiscal year during the planning process, the fire department's brought in, the town personnel are there, and we work together to figure out what we think that cost is going to look like for the fiscal year. And there's a price that's agreed upon between the town and the fire company, and that contract of service runs the full fiscal year. So I think that the idea that funding is going to run out, I don't think that's a valid statement. Now, looking into the next fiscal year, that's something we're going to have to work very closely with the fire department on. And if there are capital needs that they desire or need to be able to keep the people of Berlin safe, then that's something we need to look at. Staffing wise, we need to evaluate that as well. The town's growing, the county's growing, and Berlin has probably one of the larger service areas when you look at the size and scope of the fire department. So part of that burden goes on the county as well. And as the next mayor, I'll advocate for our fire department to get adequate funding. Now, Steve, I think you talked about something that does need to be discussed, and that's a funding formula. If we look at a funding formula, the counties have one for many years. In some ways that gets exploited by basis of the formula itself. So what I want is a more equitable funding structure for the fire company. And maybe it's not geared towards calls for service, but it's geared towards making sure that they can cover their operating expenditures.
Wonderful. Thank you. So Jennifer and then Bill.
Well, I definitely believe we need a fire department and an EMS team here in the town. And I feel that unfortunately the town hall has failed on occasions to support the fire department in this town. Again, this year, there is a plan to strip some of the promised funding from the fire department. And you can look at the minutes from the work session on the 13th of April and also the dispatch on the 16th of April. But until I can get into the books and determine where we are, what we have, I don't know where or how we can replace the funds that were previously designated to the fire department that they pulled and put to something else. I agree there needs to be a formula. I need to study more the EMS study and determine what other suggestions that they made and look at what the county formulas are and that, but we can't have a town that doesn't have EMS available. The town has too many older people and too many kids that have accidents, and we need to have that service available. But I am going to, if I get in, I am going to do that 12-year audit. I sat in that town hall meeting with the taxes, and the people were screaming about what happened to the money that was supposed to go to the fire department. And I am going to find what happened to the money that was supposed to go to the fire department. And I am going to tell this town what was purchased instead of the town being supported for several years. Because there needs to be more transparency in this town, and it just isn't here with this current administration.
Okay, Bill and then Ron.
I couldn't agree more with what Ms. Allen just said about transparency. My family has been part of the fire company for a long time, not in Berlin, but Ocean City. I've got a tremendous amount of respect and admiration for the fire company. If I become mayor, I will do everything in my power to make sure that these men and women are properly funded. They've been suffering too long on account of a couple people's actions. I'd like to, I don't want to get too far into this, but you know, there's some things that have happened over the years that these guys really haven't been able to get themselves back on their feet from. And I think it's outrageous. You know, they got knocked back by a lawsuit a couple years back that really, that might have knocked them off their feet. So in that respect, these are the most important people we have. In the worst situations in our lives, these are the first people in to take care of business. I'm tired of neglecting them. I want to make sure that they are taken care of to the best of our ability, no matter what it takes. So if I'm elected mayor, come hell or high water, I will make sure that the fire company gets everything they deserve. They've been punished long enough.
Okay, Ron.
Well, the good point about going last is I've heard all the comments. But I would tell you that, look, there is a limit. First of all, let me say I agree with all the comments. The fire department and EMS have done a tremendous service for the town of Berlin over the years. Gee raised a good point about perhaps we could get the funding for the accidents that occur on them 2 major highways through the town. I think that's a good point. I wasn't aware of that before, that it was not happening. So I do believe that that's something we've got to do. But I would tell you, in the end, you can't bleed the town people for the fire department, no matter how bad we need that. We need to support the fire department the best we can, and I like Zach's approach. Let's sit down with them each and every year and see if we can work out a budget for those personnel down there.
Okay.
Charlene, before we move on, I'd like the chance to rebut Mr. Todd's comment.
Okay,
Yes,
briefly.
go ahead, Zach.
Thank you. The lawsuit that was brought on to the fire department was brought up by Mr. Todd. In fact, I was the gentleman that brought the lawsuit against the fire department. But I think there's an important distinction here that needs to be made. There were a few bad apples at the time that particular incident addressed. And I personally worked every possible avenue I could outside of the court system to be able to solve that disagreement. Once again, it's not geared towards the entire fire department at all. I have a lot of love and a lot of history, and it's deeply entrenched in that department. And I worked there professionally for a number of years, and there are a lot of great people that serve this community. However, I think it's important for everybody to know that over the past 4 years as a council member, I've been the only voice for the fire department in many respects. When the current administration or some of my colleagues chastise the fire department, I'm the first one that sticks up for them. I don't bring any of those things that happened years ago that we've all moved past. Apparently most of us have moved past. I don't bring those to the table. They're something that we have solved a long time ago. And I think that to even remotely suggest that my history with the fire department would impact my time as mayor or the way that I continue to advocate for them is just not right.
If we're talking about the budget, that's something that definitely should be addressed, but that's just my opinion.
All right, let's move on. Next question. Using the chicken plant purchase as a recent example, it is apparent that big ticket spending has been a source of controversy in our community. Would you support instituting a cap that would force most large expenditures to community referendum? We'll start with Bill and then go to Jennifer.
I support making the public aware of anything we do with their money. I'm a big believer in that. I want every decision made to be brought up in front of the public. That being said, I know there's some things that need to happen pretty quick, on the fly, and you're not able to do that every time. But the important ones definitely should be made. People should be made aware of. There's too many times in this town that people find out about things after the fact. Thankfully, to the reporting that you guys do with the Dispatch or other news outlets. If I was to become mayor, transparency is everything. Broadcasting and hitting people where that counts right now, whether it be through social media or live streaming every council meeting with better quality audio and video. These are things that we can put all the information out in front of the public in a way more efficient and clear manner than what we're doing right now. So I'm a huge advocate of making the public aware of everything we're doing, especially when it comes to monetary things.
Okay, Jennifer and then Zach.
I agree with that completely. I even think that there should be referendums for annexation because we need to have more of the town's input. And if the town would have had more input in the chicken plant, with the comments that I have gotten on my email, I do not think anybody would have ever supported that purchase. Or if they did, they would have been in the minority of supporting that purchase. And if we're going to spend big, big money, then the town should have input into it.
Okay, Zach and then Ron.
So I think that this is an important part because people elect representatives, people elect a mayor. It's part of that election is the confidence to say you have the ability to be able to weigh decisions. You have the ability to make sure we're not overextending ourselves. We don't want to deplete the reserves. We don't want to use cash to pay for long-term capital items. But to go to referendum every single time, I don't think that's feasible. One, there's a cost. Two, public input's easier to get through other mechanisms like public hearings and workshops and things of that nature. You don't always need a formal referendum. However, what you do need are representatives that listen. So I've always looked at my role as a council member as being no different than any other citizen. I'm just merely a representative. So what that means is I have to be able to weigh public input. I have to be able to do my homework and understand what I think is the best option, and then blend those two together in the form of a vote, a recommendation, adjustments to policy. That's how it works. So I think that you use a referendum wisely, and it has a time, it has a place. Take, for example, the tax increase that we all experience. I said, hey, look, there's an awesome opportunity to be able to get public input. I recommended before the council that we have a listening session at Stephen Decatur. That's the whole reason we had it, was because I wanted to be able to hear from the public. I wanted to be able to hear from the Chamber of Commerce and any industry professionals that were going to be impacted by that tax increase. And what we had was overwhelming negativity towards raising the taxes that drastically. So then what you have to ask yourself is, do my representatives listen? And if they don't listen, this is the perfect opportunity to vote them out. So I think that we use the public input wisely, but it's crucial that a mayor is listening all the time and being able to allow people to know when it's appropriate to be able to speak out during a meeting.
Okay, Ron and then G.
Well, again, the comment is made about the slowing down the process of government, and that would be true. But please, the people cannot petition something to referendum anytime they desire. But I think the point is well taken that elected council persons and the mayor need to listen to the people. You can't just drive bullheaded forward and disregard the comments of the people.
Okay, G.
I think it's very important to distinguish between what I'll call social media traffic, the comments and posts that are placed. I definitely disagree that we should have every tax increase and all these financial decisions go to referendum as a part of the operations. It'll just create chaos. Most people, if they want valid, researched, credible information, should go to traditional news resources, such as our local papers, local TV stations. We are so much more open than any time in the town's history. But a lot of people get their information from the internet. And quite frankly, I think that where we are as not only the town, but as a society, is in a very, very dangerous place where people ignore established, credible media and will believe anything they read on the internet. This has been a challenge. We have, if you go back, we have never had a secret society. We don't have a secret government. We announce these things. It's read the paper. I don't think a lot of people pay attention until someone makes a snide or negative comment. Then that gets people attention. If that's the direction and decision-making process you want to have, well then, God bless you, because you're going to need going to go through some really stormy times. And I think credible information from credible sources works. And I hope to see the day when that becomes the new norm, because it used to be for a long time.
Right. We have two questions here from the Berlin Chamber of Commerce that representing the business community. So I'll break it up and do one and then come back to do the next one. What is your position on the current partnership between the town of Berlin and the Berlin Chamber of Commerce in regards to street closures, alcohol sales, and overall support for events such as the spring celebration, jazz and blues? spring and fall cruisers, bathtub race, fiddler's convention, fiddler's convention, etc. So we're going to start with Ron and then go to G.
First of all, let me tell you, I don't believe that public alcohol consumption should be allowed. I've always been disappointed the town permits that sort of thing. You know, we talk about like Ocean City. It's a family affair. Well, is it really in Berlin when you have public alcohol and intoxicated people on the streets? It is not. I can never support open alcohol on the streets of Berlin.
G and then Zach.
Well, I think, again, it goes back to what is working, what do people expect, and what times are we living in? It's not 50 years ago. There has always been a group of people in town, and it goes from generation to generation, who think that no alcohol should be in any way consumed except in behind closed doors, and there's just this very ancient attitude that in reality is not part of 21st century living in our town or in most of America. Yes, there are places that can choose to do that. I do not think Berlin is one of those places that has a fear of public consumption of alcohol, nor does it have a problem. The fact that we have been so successful is the fact that I think we are in step with contemporary attitudes and the ability of people to behave themselves in a public setting. And I have no regrets on the direction that we've taken and that we currently stand.
I'll do Zach and then Jennifer, please.
So I think there's an important point to be made here that some people think that businesses have the ability to vote in the election to determine their representation. Unless you actually own property in Berlin, you're not really able to do that. So the businesses are able to get their voice and their vote across through the Chamber of Commerce. So I believe that as a mayor, you need to weigh the opinions and the professional guidance given to you by the Chamber of Commerce with that merit. So you need to be able to say, okay, let's have an open dialogue about what you think is working and what you don't, and ways that we can improve. So good dialogue between the mayor and the Chamber of Commerce is essential. With regard to the alcohol events in Berlin, as a council member, I voted for, over the past 4 years, to continue to allow the 6 events that currently allow alcohol in Berlin. I've always voted in favor of those. But with the question that if we're experiencing any problems or violence or anything as a result of those events, then we're going to have to roll that back. But I have no intentions of expanding more than 6 events for the town of Berlin for public alcohol consumption.
All right, Jennifer and then Bill.
Well, I too agree that there has to be a good relationship between the Chamber of Commerce and the mayor and the council. I don't have a problem with the 6 events. I would consider if they gave me a good rationale for increasing that, like let's say I'm mayor and I get my crab feast. Well, what's a crab feast without people having beer? Now, I personally am a teetotaler and I don't drink at all, but I would not stop you, Steve, from having your glass of beer if you're sitting there with me having crabs. So I think that you need to be a little negotiable, but I have no problems with how the alcohol has been handled in town or with the events that are in town.
Okay. Bill?
I agree. I think that, first off, I think that the Chamber does a wonderful job with all the events that they do. It's been terrific for years. And I also know for a fact that when they sell alcohol, they get a lot of money. So that's a good economic driver. If I was mayor, 6 events, that's great. If we were to do some more, we might be able to work that in as well. I think if there's any, I can understand where the concern comes from, but we've been very fortunate around here with the events that we have had where we don't have a lot of issues at all. maybe a little bit of littering here and there, but these are things that we can quell pretty easy. I think that one option to make the public feel a little bit safer was maybe if we do these events and alcohol is being served, that we have bartenders or people that are taking money that are TAM certified. So in the event that somebody is too inebriated or you know, we can quell that situation very easily and just say, sorry, sir, you know, or ma'am, you're done for today. Come back tomorrow, kind of thing. You know, that is a certification to hold. So I know that might help people feel a little bit better about the situation, but we got to be real, man. This is 2020. People like drinking. It is what it is. If we can make a couple bucks off of it, then we should let that happen.
All right. So the second part of the chamber question here is, what is your position on the continuance of the town to fund marketing investments and paid staff to support those efforts? Are you in favor of increasing those efforts in the budget to attract new visitors to Berlin? So we have Zach and then Bill.
I think we touched on this a little bit in the beginning of the program also, with respect to economic and community development. I am for the marketing. However, during the budget, the 20% tax increase, one of the recommendations I had was to do away with the billboard that's on Route 50. I felt like there were better ways to be able to spend our marketing dollars. We were spending $18,000 a year for a billboard, and I know that we can get a better return on investment through other mediums. So it's about how we spend our money. It's about how we target the customers that are going to come in, visit Berlin, not mess up any of our infrastructure, but also be able to spend money with our shops. So I think that that's a crucial part of the economic development. So I intend to invest heavily in that, but in ways that we're able to measure the effectiveness of that investment.
Okay. Bill and then G.
I agree with that. I agree with that a lot. And if I was to become mayor, I would take a hard look at where these dollars are being spent now. You know, there's a lot of tactics that are outdated, and the billboard is a perfect example of that. That's a tremendous amount of money. You got to realize where you are. People live their whole lives off that little thing in their pocket. They get all the information in the world off of that. And a lot of times when you put information out via social media or website, these type of things, you really get the information to the consumer a lot easier. If I'm driving down the road, I'll be honest with you, I don't read every billboard I see because I'm focused on what's in front of me and what's behind me. So I couldn't agree more with what Zach said. I take a hard look at where the money is being spent and how we could do it better in alignment with the times.
G and then Ron.
First of all, the implication that our marketing dollars are not spent in modern media is absolute nonsense. It is extremely effective marketing. We have used what I call the internet, where you control the message, where you basically put out a marketing message to a variety of people, not just in our backyard, not just here in the Mid-Atlantic, but throughout the country, has been a very substantial and effective way in increasing our visibility and increasing the visitorship to our community. Yes, I'm open to eliminating the billboard if that's outdated, but then I think that when you actually look at how the dollars are spent, it'd be very helpful. I think most small towns would love to be able to do what we're doing. They just don't have the capacity. They haven't made the commitment. They don't even want to have a part-time person. Who's supposed to do all this? We are doing these things and we're doing them well. And I think any implication that our marketing is old-fashioned or out of the step with the times is absolutely false.
Ron and then Jennifer.
Again, I like the idea of supporting the chamber. It is important for us to bring events into the town. But I do want to go back and on the comment about the liquor. I am not opposed to drinking in the town of Berlin, but the one item that stands out to me that I think is absolutely horrible, the Christmas parade of all things. How many intoxicated people do you see on the streets of Berlin during that event? This is supposed to be a kids event.
Okay, Jennifer.
Okay, marketing, right? I think that until I would be able to get into the budget and see where the marketing is going and what Ivy is doing in her shop to get the information out, I don't know how to answer the question. I think that, yeah, everybody uses their cell phones. Cell phone ads would be good. Everybody uses Facebook, but if you don't have a Facebook account, you can't get into a lot of this stuff. I'm not wild about billboards, but until I would be able to go in and look at the processes, I'm hard pressed to answer. I would like to say though that quality is the voice of your customer, and we should have a quality town. That being said, we should look at how people make their decisions for going out, whether it's TripAdvisor or Yelp or whatever, and find ways to get the word out about Berlin. But since I'm not familiar with how we're doing it, that's about all I can say.
Okay. This question is just for Gee and Zack as sitting elected officials. Why did Gee and Zack not attend the Black Lives Matter march this summer as elected officials?
We want to start with me?
Sure.
Okay. Quite frankly, the police chief volunteered to attend that. I did not receive any personal invitation or request. I feel like, I go to many, many events that are held in this community, but I never expect to go to every single event, especially those that are not regular. The amount of time that I spend is in trying to be a mayor of this town, not just somebody who's cuts ribbons, which is certainly part of the job. But in that respect, we had no problems. They had a plan. They followed the plan. It went very well. And I feel no obligation to attend every single event in this town. There's a lot more to do as a mayor than just be a figurehead.
Okay, Zack.
Thank you. When I look at my role as a representative, my job is to listen, not always participate, but to listen. And I do listen to things like the Black Lives Matter movement. I respect their movement and I respect the things that they stand for. Now, I've never participated in a protest in my life, and I wasn't about to start now, but I do listen. As mayor, if I was asked to speak, I would have spoken, I would have listened, but I probably still would not have participated in the march itself. But that's where I stand on the issue.
All right. Thank you. The next question is, our downtown retail and restaurants have flourished in recent years due to a large amount of support from the town. How would you take Berlin to the next level of becoming a sustainable community, just that we wouldn't need to be a bedroom community to Ocean City and Salisbury? We'll start with Jennifer and then go to G.
Can you repeat that?
Sure. Our downtown retail and restaurants have flourished in recent years due to a large amount of support from the town. How would you take Berlin to the next level of becoming, it's a quote unquote sustainable community? It's a term that's in the state. It's just that we wouldn't need to be a bedroom community to Ocean City and Salisbury. Our citizens have tough questions.
I know it's enemy. It's when you look at the size of the community and the downtown area and what is available for restaurants and eateries and things like that. there's not a lot of space to be more than what they just said, that they were a bedroom community. You know, we don't have the census or that you have at Ocean Pines, where you have 12,000 year round, and we don't have the 8,000 year round that's over in Ocean City. And I go to all those places because as the year goes by, you know, you get tired of eating at one place or another. I guess maybe we could put in another restaurant, but then you take money away from the ones that are there, you know, because you only have so much of a customer base. Until we would get more year-round residents or more tourists in the summer, I don't know how you're going to do more than make more money than what you are already making and sustaining where you are. I think that once the new restaurant opens behind the hotel, the new De Novus restaurant, that brings another one in. I think it's wonderful that Fisher's is there. I don't know that the delis can support having another deli. It's something that we would have to work with the Chamber of Commerce and discuss as to what kind of ideas that they have. Maybe you could do some pop-ups. But I think that you would need to take a lot of time and research that. And I just don't see the traffic in the winter that would support more than what we already have.
Okay, all right. Well, G and then Ron.
First of all, I think that we have a very good balance between the types of businesses we have and the seasonal visitors that we have and guests and our year-round population. Well, we attract good people to this town. We're not just trying to bring anybody for any reason, for any purpose here. We have set standards that are good standards. They bring good people, and these good people spend a good supportive amount of money for our local businesses. I do not see the need to expand downtown. For years, it was grossly underutilized. And now, if one business leaves, it is a matter of a few weeks, at the most a couple months before a new business is in and established. That's a natural part of the process in the private enterprise. But we don't have a high turnover. We have a very steady but gradual turnover. I think we are in just the right place at just the right time, and I think we can keep enhancing the quality of our business community, but I don't think we have to drastically change it in any way. We are bringing good people to this community, and we have good businesses who are employing local folks who want good year-round jobs. And I don't think we, and I also want to mention, I would love for someone to contact the Chamber of Commerce and see what they say about the relationship with the town of Berlin and with Mayor Gee Williams. It's in a whole nother level than it's ever been, and it's about everybody contributing. It's not the town doing things and then they benefit. It's about us joining together and bringing our human resources and our financial resources to the table and getting things done. That is something that I am concerned about in the future should the voters decide to go in a different direction. Getting things done doesn't happen by magic. It takes a lot of work and a lot of working, not only people that you know, but also telling, making new relationships that are, not for personal benefit, but for the community's benefit. And these are all things that I think that I have a proven track record of doing. And I think that it's, because I don't send out a post on the internet every time doing some work to help the town, to me, that's a distraction and not necessary. And so I think people just have to judge how this town is and where it is based on the results.
Okay. Ron and then Bill, please.
I heard the question and I've heard a response from the other candidates. I'm not certain that I understand what the question really was, but I would say this to you. I would like to sit down with the person who wrote that question and ask them, what is the next level that they're looking for?
Fair enough. Bill and then Zach, please.
I think with the bringing Berlin to the next level, it harkens back to what I've been saying a lot this whole time, is that arts and entertainment could be the saving grace for this town. We are steeped in it pretty good, but we could truly be an incubator for it here. And in that same term, short-term rentals. That's how we get people into town. I don't necessarily agree with Mr. Williams in the sense of the quick turnover. I'd like to get them for a day and night and a day and a half. You know, we have so many great restaurants here now. There's so many different places for entertainment, and so the arts and entertainment, short-term rentals kind of go hand in hand. And to me, that's the kind of thing that could bolster us to the next level.
Hey, Zach.
Thank you. This gets back to my opening statement. I mean, when I talk about Berlin going beyond just Main Street, this is kind of the crux of the whole discussion. When we look at a multi-purpose building that the town is in negotiations with of being able to help develop at the old Flower Street School and the current multi-purpose building site, this is a great opportunity for us to be able to dream a little bit bigger and to really satisfy the needs of the community. One, with maybe putting an incubator for entrepreneurship. Flower Street used to have a vibrant business community. It is not there anymore. So we really need to look at organic, growing it from within, access to good high-speed internet after school, so that kids that are growing up can come to an after-school program, get tech, get arts, get everything they need right there, and then also have access to an entrepreneurship incubator. We really need to look at like what Worcester County has done with the Snow Hill complex. They bring in people for different indoor sports recreation. I know Heron Park was touted for these things and these opportunities and a YMCA. I think that we see those, at least I see those, fitting more within the site on Flower Street. There's a lot of stuff. We have access to parking. The infrastructure needs are already there. I think that project has been in discussion since 2001. It seems to emerge and then drift off. But we really need to focus the energy that we've said we're going to focus on Heron Park, on developing the multi-purpose building site into what it should be.
Okay, next question. What is your position on a medical cannabis dispensary within the town limits? If cannabis becomes federally legal, what is your position on a recreational dispensary within the town limits? We'll start with G and then go to Jennifer.
Well, anything that it's done with medical cannabis is simply a function of what Worcester County will do with the health department. We right now cannot allow people to do tattoo parlors in town because the county says they're not going to provide any services to support that through the health department, and they will not fund it so that people can have those, what I think are harmless, certainly harmless and not that controversial businesses. If that's not possible, I don't think it's even realistic to think that that we're going to get support to allow a cannabis dispensary, whether it's for medical use or for recreational use. Personally, I don't have an objection to that, but I think we have to be realistic. The town is not an island, and we cannot afford to start our own health department. We need to have the cooperation of the county, and I think it's one of those things where there again, they may need to look at mainland Worcester County versus Ocean City. We are not Ocean City. Neither are the other towns in this county. So why do we always have to live with the standard that is appropriate for a resort, but not appropriate for year-round communities? And I think this is one of those issues. I have little hope in the immediate future that anything will change, but I think this is another one of those issues that over time maybe can become a point of public focus as to why does Worcester County have to live in one time, and the rest of the country is moving forward in the 21st century. Town of Berlin's committed to being a 21st century town, and I think we're far ahead of most of the communities in this area. But it doesn't mean the path is always going to be easy or without some major hurdles to conquer from time to time.
Jennifer and then Zack.
Well, as a healthcare professional, I am opposed to recreational cannabis. As a healthcare professional, I believe that medicinal cannabis does work. But I think that cannabis is regulated by the state and then down to the county, and not up to Berlin to take this on until they are so directed by the state and the county that this is something that we would be assigned to do or licensed to do. So I think that in West Ocean City, it's working in that area, but West Ocean City is only a couple of miles down the road. And if our people need to go and get a prescription filled, then it's like going to CVS. They can drive down to West Ocean City and get the prescription.
Okay, Zack and then Ron.
So the mayor brought up tattoos. So when the tattoos were originally brought before the mayor and council, the request was for microblading, so like filling in an eyebrow or something along those lines. But they're classified as tattooing. What interests me is that the dissent from the mayor and the council at the time was that we were going to force through some emergency legislation that's going to basically adopt the county's outdated policy of saying that you have to have a doctor on site in order to be able to do that. And I felt that was outdated at the time, just a few years ago. And I said, hey, let's form a committee and let's discuss being able to do real comprehensive legislation that keeps the people safe, but still allows people to be able to come to Berlin and get their eyebrows filled in if they have a medical need or whatever the case may be. It would also open the door to some of the arts that's been discussed this evening and through the medium of tattooing. The problem is that the county operates as the Board of Health for Worcester County. So the committee for the tattoo regulations, we had very constructive regulations that we wanted to discuss with the county to further our research with the project, and they wouldn't even put us on the docket. So I think that the power of the mayor is to be able to use that pulpit sometimes to say, hey, look, you are our county government. You do function as the Board of Health. We want to make sure that if we're going to adopt regulations, that we're doing it in a mechanism that keeps the people safe. So you have to hold people accountable. You have to be able to make sure that we can't have our hands tied by the county government. Now, I think that looking at medical cannabis, I've received sometimes some concerns over drone regulations and stuff like that throughout the town. The way that that's structured is that the state passed legislation on drones that actually binds the municipalities from being able to further regulate it. So in the instance that medical marijuana or cannabis is opened up, I foresee some other regulations coming down the pike. So we got to have a broad and constructive discussion about how we're going to regulate it and what we want to see in Berlin.
Okay, Ron and then Bill.
Well, I'm not sure that we would have an opportunity to say yes or no, we would permit it in Berlin. It's regulated by the county. And if the county authorized it and if people wanted to build it in Berlin, whether I'm for it or not, I don't think it makes any difference.
All right, Bill.
I'm a big believer in medical cannabis and recreational cannabis should it ever come down the pike. I think that it is something that is regulated by the county, no doubt about it. I also think that if somebody came into town, they wanted to repurpose a building that we have that was vacant, and they have a viable business plan for a medical marijuana dispensary, I would do everything in my power to drive the point home to the county that this is something that we want to see done. A lot of times with these operations, these people have a lot of money. So I'm not trying to turn good business away at any point in time.
Hey, we have a lot more, but we're going to start making some judgment calls here because we are going on 3 hours. We would like to, any of the citizens that are watching this later, we don't get to your questions. The candidates are all very accessible. They all have, web pages or emails that you can track them down and get some of your questions answered. Because they're all great questions, but we just are starting to run out of time and maybe bandwidth. But all right, so this one citizen writes, and quoting, "I'm tired of seeing special interests dominate over town elected officials. How will you maintain your independence in the face of strong business people with an agenda to push what's best for them, not necessarily town citizens?" So we'll go with Bill first and then Ron, please.
I think it's incredibly important to be independent. And when I say that, I mean it. I truly mean it, probably to my detriment. But I could not care less about how much money someone has. Everything that I do and would do if elected mayor has everything to do with the public's best interests at heart. There's no amount of money, there's no one's last name that will sway anything that I would do in a position of authority as being the mayor of Berlin. It has gone on too long. You talk about the good old boy network, it's a real thing. We all know that. It's time. It's time for that to go away.
Hey, Ron, and then G on deck.
Going back to when I was mayor previously, I will tell you this: my reactions to anything that came down the pike was what was best for the people of Berlin, and that was where I left it. I never allowed any outside influence come in and dictate to me how I was going to respond to a certain situation.
All right. We have G and then Jennifer, please.
I find it almost humorous that people think that I'm heading some good old boy system when I've spent my entire adult life working against the good old boy system that really ran this town for generations. And I think I have a rapport and ability to communicate with anybody in our town. I don't judge people based on rather how much money they have or their connections or how much political power they have. And it has made all the difference. And to suggest that somehow I and the town council are favoring some citizens over others is just not true. And I spent my life making sure that this town is an open and transparent community. And in some cases, I'm amazed by people who make statements who have never contacted town hall, who've never contacted me, never talked to a town administrator. I mean, where does the information come from? It comes from somewhere, but it doesn't come from any credible source. So I find it just flabbergasting to think that the town is run by a good old boy network, when in fact, I spent my lifetime making sure the town could succeed by doing the things the citizens need and want.
Jennifer, your turn, and then Zach.
Well, I'd like to start out with my first postcard, where I said that my core values are commitment, integrity, communication, service to others, and community. And then I'd like to say that my graduate degree is in quality systems. And in quality systems, as I mentioned earlier, quality is the voice of the customer. To me, I feel that the citizens of Berlin are my customer. I do not have ties with anyone in this town. I've only been here, I've only owned my house for 5 years and lived here for a little over 4. I talk to the people, I listen to the people, and my concern is the voice of the customer and what the people are saying to me. And they are unhappy with the current system as it is. They do feel that there's a good old boy network. Whether there is or isn't, they feel that way. They feel that there is a certain amount of people that have partiality shown to them where others are not treated the same. And I can tell you that I have not taken a dime from anyone for this campaign. I am paying it all out of my checkbook. And the reason why I chose to do that is because I do not want to be indebted to anyone. The only people that I feel that I will be indebted to is the town of Berlin and the citizens who live here.
All right, sorry about this, guys. 1 second. Zach, you're up.
Thank you. So when I was elected as a council member to represent a district. Once I took office, the decisions I made, I felt impacted the whole town. So with that being said, I've spent the past 4 years of my life representing the interests of the people of Berlin. There are things that I've dissented on or voted no against that I feel were not in the best interest of the people. And that's my job as a representative. That's a duty that I take very seriously as a mayor. And if you elect me, you're going to get nothing but transparency. You're going to get nothing but an advocate. So that's my 4-year history, and it will continue indefinitely.
Okay, this is a detailed question, so try to pay attention. The Berlin Planning Commission is undertaking a review of the town's comprehensive plan, including the addition of a chapter on resilience, and is currently operating under a proposed timetable to complete that review by the end of 2020. What is your opinion on the proposed draft resilience chapter, and what other elements of the current plan do you feel merit revision? Also, do you think the review timetable is realistic, and how would you work to engage the public in the review process? We'll start with Jennifer, then go to G.
I don't think that it's realistic in an election year to say that 3 months after the new mayor is in place, that we will have a comprehensive plan written with or without a resilience chapter. I think that the new mayor needs time to meet with each of the departments, discuss what is in the current plan, what they would like to add to the plan. I think that probably a couple more town halls to pull the citizens in. I never quite understood from the previous meetings what they were reaching for with the resilience chapter. So if I'm attending all of these meetings and I don't understand it, then I think that there are others in the town that don't understand it too. And so I think that this is something that could wait, and we could go back and look at what's there, what needs to be there, and then get further input from the town.
Okay, G and then Bill.
Well, we certainly are anticipating the formal recommendations for the resilience plan from the Planning Commission, but it has been a slow process. It is one where I don't call them up and say, you must do this and you must do it now, and this is what you must do. These are all myths. We want them to come to as best they can, and I realize there's appropriate and creative tension within the Planning Commission as to which direction the town should go, but I think it's a process that has to be allowed to complete itself. And I agree that once the recommendations were made, that's when it's the responsibility of the mayor and council to bring in public input. The Planning Commission is appointed to make their best judgments as to what is in the best interest of the town. They're not elected representatives. That's why when something like this, when they make a decision, it's then brought before the town council, and then we are able to expound upon it, get information out to the public, have public conversations. With things that we have done, such as stormwater, we have community meetings. We just don't do everything at town hall. We go where people are. And I think that's the part that people need to understand, is that the planning commission needs to do its job first, and I'm confident they will. But then the process takes a whole nother level, which is where the public input begins with the mayor and council.
Okay, Bill and then Zach.
I don't envy the planning commission at all for the job that they have to do. It's tremendously important and to all of us and the growth of the town and everything else. I'm not a big fan of putting timetables on that type of thing. I feel like the time is right when the right decision is made. As far as the resilience and everything, I'd have to look more into these type of things to come up with an educated answer for you. But I'm more than willing to look into it when I'm there, hopefully.
Okay, Zach and then Ron.
So I think it's important for people to realize that the comprehensive plan entails a lot of the stuff that we've discussed this evening. It sets the direction for growth and development of the town. The design, and somebody just mentioned the timetable, that's a 10-year horizon that's put on by the state. So you adjust and make amendments to your comprehensive plan every 10 years. So when we look at this, we're getting 3 new members of the council. We've been bound by COVID, which does not allow us to all meet and group together and have true discussions about where we want our town to go. We've talked about green belts. We've talked about resilience. I think 3 months is not realistic. We need to look at a full comprehensive review of the plan and really figure out where the town wants to go. When we look at the fact that this plan was just recently adjusted, I don't think that's a good way of moving forward. So if something's outside of the comprehensive plan, it's there for a reason. The people meet, they discuss where they want to see the town go. It's not just something you adjust on the fly because it doesn't meet within your boundaries. So I take it very seriously as a representative. I'm going to take it very seriously as a mayor. It's a document that we need to follow.
Okay, Ron.
Again, I love the comments. Don't forget that the comprehensive plan, any changes being made to it has to go before a public hearing anyway, before it's adopted. So, anyone who has any comments for or against it are certainly welcome to come out in public, and the mayor and council can hear those comments at that time.
Okay, our next question. What is your diversity plan for Berlin? We'll start with G and then go to Zach.
Well, I consider diversity part of our everyday operations and policies. We started as a community before we were a town as a classic Southern plantation. And we then in the 20th century made great strides, but they were slow, sometimes made in begrudging circumstances. And certainly in recent administrations, the diversity of the community is no longer just as it has traditionally been, black and white. We also have people of Hispanic heritage. We have people from countries from every continent, and they're coming here because they feel that they're accepted, that they're embraced. They're not here because they're uncomfortable. We're bringing good people to our community, and they're being accepted and supported by most of the people. It will never be 100%, but the attitudes and the outreach that people make in all aspects, not just in government, but in private enterprise, in the nonprofits, in the faith-based community, in education, the attitudes are night and day what they were. And I think that we need to just continue along that path. We do not judge people as a mayor and council based on their racial background, their religious background, their accent, their national origin, or any of that. And I think that is the path that we're on, and we should continue to stay on And I believe that we will, regardless of this particular election. It's just, this is what this community is about and has been for several years.
Okay. Zach and then Jennifer.
So diversity plan, I look at Berlin being a welcoming community. Sure, there's more we can do to celebrate African-American entrepreneurship, Pride Month, our Latin festivals, things of that nature. There's a lot we can do as a community that is not being done now. And it gets back to the opening statement of saying that we have very different neighborhoods throughout Berlin, and it's about bringing us closer together. So we need to celebrate the rich history that we have as a town, as a community. Certain neighborhoods have different history, and that can be celebrated through arts, through festivals, through whatever medium we can do as a community. But I think it's about empowering the individuals as well. So if somebody comes in and says, I want to have a X, Y, and Z festival, then we as a town need to help make sure that can come to realization. So there are ways that we can improve and that we can all come closer together, and that will be done under my tenure.
Okay, Jennifer and then Bill.
Well, I agree with both Mayor and Zach in their comments. As a nurse, you don't see color, you don't see ethnicity, you don't see religion. We are all put on this earth as equal people, and we should all be able to get along with each other. I think that we could do some programs in the town hall to bring in students, and to bring in the students of whatever neighborhood for interning, to learn how to do specific jobs, to get their volunteer time so that they can graduate from high school. We could have some type of heritage festival for different nationalities. We could have picnics, you know, and invite the community to attend. There are many things we can do, but we shouldn't have a wall on Route 113 dividing the town. And we should all be recognized as the citizens of Berlin. And if I am elected mayor, I am elected to be the mayor for everybody, whether you live out off of Seahawk Road, or whether you're here in Henry's Green, or on Bay Street, or wherever. We're all that customer that I was talking about. And we should strive to have a quality town with a quality environment, and take care of each other, because we are all Berliners, no matter what color we are, or what age, or what race or nationality.
Okay. Bill and then Ron.
I think diversity is key to any successful town. And I, born and raised here, yeah, it's blatantly apparent what goes on. 113 has been a dividing place for a long time, but it doesn't need to be that way. I'm a huge believer, as I said all night long, arts and entertainment. Music and art bring people together. It always has, it always will. The reason why it doesn't look diverse when you walk through town, maybe on Main Street, because there's nothing to offer to anybody. Not every culture likes bluegrass music. Not every culture you have to have something for everyone. When we talk about events, that needs to be taken into consideration. I also have been tossing around in my mind, and it sounds kind of minuscule, but it means a lot. A community barbecue maybe once a month, tying all the neighborhoods together, man. Everybody come out and have a good time. I don't know about you, but I've had some of the best experiences of my life being in situations where nobody else looks like me. And I've had a blast. And I take those experiences and I try to recreate them with my friends, and I can't. I don't know why, but this is the way it is. The more we communicate with other people that may not look like us or talk like us or, act like us, the better off we're going to be as a society. And that's what makes a well-rounded individual. And that will make us a well-rounded town. So my answer to diversity is I would just offer them something that they want, whatever nationality or race, whatever the case may be. I'm not opposed to, African dance music at a festival or a mariachi band at another. The Taylor House Museum, have a mariachi band one night. I guarantee you the whole town will be out there dancing, having a great time. So when we talk about diversity, that really drives home my message. Arts and entertainment is a way to bring the communities together in a fun way.
Okay, Ron?
We are all God's children. My parents never taught me to hate or fear other races. I have always practiced treat your fellow man as you would have your fellow man treat you. And I do believe, and I'm very happy that this has happened, the race relations have improved in Burley in the last 40 or 50 years. And I think the older people in the community will acknowledge that. Oh, and if I may, let's hope that in the next 40 years, they continue to improve even more.
All right, we are going to do a thing here. If you guys bear with us here, maybe a yes, no. There's a few questions left. We might be able to get through these. And I'll start with question. Would you consider selling Heron Park to encourage an industrial employer to replace the one we lost when Tyson Food left with its 650 jobs? So I'll ask you to do yes and no. If you want to expand, you can, of course. But so we'll go with Ron and then Jennifer.
Answer is yes, but with also depending upon what are they bringing to the community. We don't want to bring something we don't want.
Okay, Jennifer and then Zack.
The answer is yes, depending on what they're bringing to the community and if the town agrees to it.
Okay, Zack and then Bill.
The answer is yes, but it does depend what the employer would bring to the table. And I think that we all touched on Heron Park, and we have to look at either keeping some portions of it or selling the whole thing. So.
Okay, Bill and then G.
I would say no. I think green space is incredibly valuable. When we talk about stormwater and all these different things, we need all the help we can get. I would say no.
Okay, G.
I'm inclined to say no, and because when that property was for use for industrial use, they had hundreds of employees, and a handful lived in Berlin. Most of them were from the eastern shore of Virginia and lower Delaware. They contributed very little to the town, and I think that is the totally wrong direction for this town. We've learned from that experience. Let's not be foolish enough to go back and repeat it. There are many potential uses that are good for economic development. I agree that the northern part of the property should continue to be a very special natural park, but the rest of the property, that's one of the key reasons why the town bought it, so it doesn't become something that becomes albatross number 2 around this town. And the town can make those kinds of decisions where the town would have almost no influence if it was left up to private enterprise.
All right, again, another yes, no. Should the town require the town administrator and department heads to reside in town so they would have a vested interest in keeping the cost of living manageable for the residents? So we'll start with Zack and then Bill.
No, I think that a requirement of living in Berlin in order to work for Berlin is a no-go. Are there ways that maybe we can incentivize people to live and work in the same community? Yes, but not a mandate.
Okay. Bill and then G.
I would say yes. I think that having a little bit of skin in the game means a lot. If you live here, that means you're going to have a little bit more interest in what's going on. Not to say that they don't. They do a great job as it is. But I just think that it would only incentivize that a little bit more.
Okay, G and then Ron.
No, and it's based on experience again. We've had town administrators that have done a great job and did not live in the town limits. And we've had town administrators that lived in town and were a great disappointment. Where you live does not determine your ability, your background, and your judgment in doing that job. I think that anybody that we offer, a good opportunity, we have a great reputation, and I think that we'll get qualified people as that job continues to evolve over time. So I'm emphatically saying no, that should not be a requirement.
Okay, Ron and Jennifer.
Easily, no. We could be causing the employee to have some hardships. Unnecessary.
Okay, Jennifer.
No, I think that it doesn't matter where you live to be able to do a good job or to do a bad job. So I would not make anybody move into town to have the job.
Okay. All right. So that's going to complete our questions. I would like to give you guys a few minutes or to close it up. I don't want to abruptly just end. If we could go ahead with a closing statement from Ron, and then we'll go to Zach.
I really have nothing to add. I would encourage that, as I have from the beginning, if anyone has any particular question about me or what I have done in life or even what I propose to do with the town, please contact me on my Facebook. I am going door to door from the town of Berlin. I intend to knock on as many doors in this town as I possibly can before the election.
Okay. Zach and then Jennifer.
We've discussed a lot tonight, but it seems like the voters have more on their mind by the questions that you've mentioned that you received. So if there's anything that we haven't talked about or covered this evening, you can give me a call. My number is 443-366-2371. You can email me at info@zacktyndall.com, and you can learn more about my campaign for mayor by visiting zacktyndall.com.
Okay, Jennifer and then G.
Well, I want to thank the paper for doing the forum, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be heard on these questions. And I am more than willing to be available to answer more questions for the citizens of Berlin. If you would like me to come and visit you, I will, but only by invitation. I will not be knocking on doors. I will not be invading your spaces because with the pandemic, I know that people are uncomfortable with people coming to their homes. But if you invite me, I would be happy to visit you. If not, you can email me at Jennifer for Berlin Mayor @gmail.com, and I will answer your questions, or if you would prefer that I call you, I will do that. So please send your questions. And if you've got my postcards, my email address is there.
G and then Bill.
I believe this forum has been a great opportunity for Berlin citizens to learn and compare the choices you have in this town election. I believe my vision and knowledge and experience about Berlin are unmatched by any of my opposing honorable candidates. I strongly believe that we should try to stay on course in making Berlin a better place for not only us, but for the generations who follow. If anyone wants to send me a question, has any need for more information on any issue, certainly go to my website page, which is mayorgwilliams.com. There's a variety of ways to reach me through that website. And I would just say that I would greatly appreciate your support to serve one more term as your mayor in a town that I believe is moving very strongly in the right direction.
Okay, Bill.
I just want to thank the dispatch again for hosting all of us, and I want to thank all the other people that are running in this race for their time. I mean, we've been here for 3.5 hours, and this has been a lovely experience with every single one of you. I got to say, this has been great. if we haven't gotten to all the questions that people may have and they need me to answer, please feel free to reach out to me at any point in time. I have a Facebook page. My name is Bill Todd. It's easy to spell. I have a website, BillToddForBerlin.com. You can reach out to me if you see me driving down the road. Feel free to yell, whatever you want to do. I'm here for you folks. I'm always going to be here for you folks. And I'm never going to put any false airs on for you. What I am is what I am, and this is what you get. And I'm going to be honest with you every time, and I'm going to be real with you every time. And that's something that you don't get a lot in politics, folks. So I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy to see so many people wanting to be part of the process. And I just can't wait. I can't wait for October.
Wonderful, everyone. We really appreciate the opportunity that we all got together. And again, that's all we can say. Thank you and have a great night. We're going to go ahead and end the meeting.
Right.